informed about UKSV's recommendation. Mr. Speaker, just to be clear and for the record, the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary did receive information recently and then sought the necessary and legal advice. Once those checks were completed by the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary, I was told, that is in the last 2 weeks or so, that was entirely the right procedure, to get the legal advice and then to bring it to my attention at the first opportunity. It was the right procedure that was followed by my officials in the last few weeks. Mr. Speaker, in relation to why I was furious about the process, for the very reason, Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe I should have been given this information at the very outset. I strongly believe there were repeated times when I should have been told. I should have been told on appointment. I should have been told when Peter Mandelson was sacked. The Cabinet Secretary should have been told when he reviewed the process. The Foreign Secretary should have been told before she was asked to sign a statement to the Select Committee. And I should have been told when I ordered a review of vetting, Mr. Speaker. In relation to the point she makes about what I said in February in answer to a question of hers, I make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, I had not seen the security vetting file. I did not know that UKSV... The question asked me about vetting. I knew about the due diligence, and that's why I put before the House what I knew about the due diligence in relation to Epstein. The question asked me about vetting, and I knew what the due diligence has said, and therefore I told the House what the due diligence has said. I didn't tell them what security vetting had said because I hadn't seen the file in relation to that. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the particular details in relation to Peter Mandelson, I acted on all of the information I had available to me. The simple fact of the matter is I should have had more information. I didn't have that information. The House should have had that information, and I've now set it out in full to the House.
Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Dame Emily Thornbury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The truth is that my committee did ask. We asked on the record, and we got a partial truth that could hardly be the whole truth. But we are on record as asking the very questions that hecklers on the other side say should have been asked. And the answers are there on the record to see just what we got when we did ask. Exactly. Mr. Speaker, may I just turn to my question? A month before Mandelson's appointment was announced, the then Cabinet Secretary advised that the necessary security clearance should be acquired before confirming a political appointment. That doesn't seem to have been the usual practice. I'm glad that it's changed because it was clearly abused. Because what happened was that somebody, probably Peter Mandelson himself, leaked to the press his appointment as US ambassador, effectively bouncing the government into confirming it. But then when the confirmation did come forward about his appointment, it did not make clear that it was subject to vetting in either the offer letter to Peter Mandelson or in the government's press release. I'm afraid to say, doesn't this look like, for certain members of the Prime Minister's team, getting Peter Mandelson the job was a priority that overrode everything else, and that security considerations were very much second order?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank her for her question? Her committee did ask relevant questions, and that's why I have indicated that it was unforgivable that the Foreign Secretary was asked to sign a statement in response to those very questions without being told about the recommendation. The questions were asked. She was advised and asked to sign a statement without being told the relevant information, and that is unforgivable. As for the appointment before developed vetting, I've changed that process now so that it can never happen again, and she heard me quote the evidence of the former Cabinet Secretary and the former Permanent Secretary in relation to that. Mr. Speaker, can I just deal with the third point she makes? And that is that somehow the Downing Street's wish to appoint Peter Mandelson overrode security concerns. Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. If I had been told that Peter Mandelson or anybody else had failed security, had not been given clearance on security vetting, I would not have appointed them. A deliberate decision was taken to withhold that material from me. A deliberate decision was taken to withhold that material. This was not a lack of asking. This wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. It was a decision taken not to share that information on repeated occasions.
Sir Ed David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's 2022 all over again.
Yeah.
Back then, when he stood on this side of the House, it was Boris Johnson who was accused of misleading Parliament and scapegoating senior officials. The then Leader of the Opposition couldn't have been clearer. The public need to know, he said, that not all politicians are the same, that not all politicians put themselves above their country, and that honesty, integrity and accountability matter. So he promised change, Mr. Speaker. He promised to break the cycle and stop the chaos. And he promised a government with, and I quote, more focus on long-term strategy, not the short-term distractions that can animate Westminster. I'm afraid the fact that he even had to make the statement today shows how badly he has failed, how badly he has let down the millions of people across our country who are so desperate for change. He blames his officials. He says he had no idea. He gives every impression of a Prime Minister in office but not in power. The facts remain, even on his own account. The Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson as Ambassador to the United States even after he had been warned about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister announced the appointment before Mandelson had been vetted, despite the clear risk to national security of putting someone unsuitable in that role. And one of his top officials, just 3 weeks into the job, clearly believed the Prime Minister wanted Mandelson to be appointed regardless of what the vetting process turned up. And the Prime Minister has relied on the vetting process to defend his decisions. So why did he ask so few questions personally about the vetting process itself? We all know the truth, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister knew that appointing Mandelson was an enormous risk. He decided it was a risk worth taking, a catastrophic error of judgment. And now that it's blown up in his face, the only decent thing to do is to take responsibility. Back in 2022, the Prime Minister rightly accused Boris Johnson of expecting others to take the blame while he clung on. That was not acceptable then, and it's not acceptable now. So I hope the Prime Minister can at least tell the House this, and we'll be listening very carefully to his answer. Was he given advice by Simon Case, the then Cabinet Secretary, that the necessary security clearances should be acquired before he confirmed his choice for US Ambassador? And did he follow that advice? Yes or no? Mr. Speaker, after the years of chaos under the Conservatives, we needed a government focused on the interests of the people, the cost of living crisis, the health and care crisis, our national security. We needed a government of honesty, integrity and accountability. So will the Prime Minister finally accept that the only way he can help to deliver that is to resign?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I set out in my statement the full facts. And in September, when the Bloomberg emails came to light, I asked the Cabinet to review the process, then Cabinet Secretary to review the process. He told me the process was as it should have been. And as soon as the information about security vetting came to light last Tuesday, I asked for the facts to be established so I could update Parliament. He asks me about the announcement before developed vetting. He's heard the evidence that I've given to the House from the former Cabinet Secretary and from the former Permanent Secretary. In relation to the advice from Simon Case, Mr. Speaker, when I asked the former Cabinet Secretary to review the process after September 25, he specifically addressed whether the process had been followed by referencing the Simon Case letter and assured me that the process was the right process to have followed. So So, in answer to his question, that was specifically looked at by Sir Chris Wormold in the review that was conducted in September of last year.
Dame Diana. Sorry, Diana, but...
The Prime Minister has gone on at considerable length about process and procedure, but ordinary people don't really care about process and procedure. They want transparency, and they want to know that they can have confidence in the words of elected politicians, like all of us in this chamber. On the question of Peter Mandelson, it was in the 90s that Peter Mandelson had to resign from the Cabinet for the first time because of his dealings with the millionaire Geoffrey Robinson. It was a few years later he had to resign from the Cabinet for the second time because of his relationships with the billionaire Hinduja family. Peter Mandelson has a history. Peter Mandelson has a history. And what this House wants to know is why, knowing Peter Mandelson's history, going back now 30 years, and given what has been known, it's one thing to say, as he insists on saying, nobody told me. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me. The question is, why didn't the Prime Minister ask?
Mr. Speaker, in relation to her question, let me be clear. I should not have appointed Peter Mandelson. As soon as the further revelations came to light, I asked the Cabinet Secretary to review the process so I could be assured about the process. He wrote to me on the 16th of September, setting out the conclusions of that review and assuring me the process had been followed properly.
Simon Hoy, Chair of PACA.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has spoken about process and the reviews and trying to put that which went wrong right. That is to be supported. But he's also asking the House and the country to believe that, notwithstanding a front-page media splash that Peter Mandelson had failed the vetting process, that there was nobody in Number 10 or in any government department that even thought to say, is there any truth in this? Could I have a briefing on that? We need to knock this story down. If nobody asked, that is the shameful thing. And if nobody asked, does it not say to the Prime Minister that the operation of his government, which seems to be process, strategy, review, never my fault, is not sustainable and is not welcomed by the country at large?
In answer to his question, the FCDA was repeatedly asked in light of inquiries. The same answer came back because a clear decision had been taken that this information was not going to be disclosed. And it wasn't disclosed to me, let alone to anybody else. So yes, repeatedly the FCDA was asked. The same answer came back as the answer that was given to me. The decision was that I wasn't to know and nobody else was to know. That was wrong.
John MacDonald.
Can I say that on this side of the House, at least, to my honourable friend, many will appreciate his apology today. But many of us will remain bewildered still why that appointment took place, despite the warnings that many of us gave him. And isn't the reality this, that when he sought to realise his ambition to become leader of the Labour Party, with very little base within the party, he became dependent on McSweeney and Mandelson and Labour together to organise, fund his election. and that when he became Prime Minister, the reward for Max Sweeney was control of Number 10, and for Mandelson, the highest diplomatic office. And the message, the unspoken message to civil servants was, what Mandelson wants, Mandelson gets. This has damaged the party that I've been a member of for 50 years. I urge him to take steps to clear this toxic culture out of our party, and take the first step by having an independent inquiry into Labour Together.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I just deal with what's at the heart of that question in relation to an unspoken message to civil servants? I don't accept that, Mr. Speaker. It is simply not good enough on a question of national security where clearance, the recommendation is clearance be denied, for anyone, particularly senior civil servants, to do anything other than provide me with the relevant information, and that is what should have happened in this case.
Sir Jeremy Wright.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been very clear about his view of the urgency of his response since he learned of this vetting information. So I want to ask him about the events of last week. He will know that the Intelligence and Security Committee asked for any information relevant to vetting to be supplied to it in the first tranche of information we were to consider. We didn't receive anything about vetting at that time. The Prime Minister has told us now that on Tuesday evening he became aware of the information he has set out. But the Intelligence and Security Committee was not told about the existence of that information. Information the Prime Minister must have recognised was within the terms of the humble address and would need to be supplied to the ISC. We were not told by his officials about the existence of that information until Thursday, after it had been published, its existence had been published in the Guardian newspaper. So I am bound to ask the Prime Minister this. If that information's existence had not been disclosed by the press, would we have been told about it? And if so, why did the ISC have to learn of its existence from the Guardian and not from the government?
Prime Minister.
Thank you for his question, and the answer is yes, it would have been provided to the committee, and I think, as he acknowledged, it has now been provided to the committee. The reason for the delay is on Tuesday night I found out simply that the recommendation had been made to deny clearance, and yet clearance had been given. I wanted to understand who gave that clearance, on what basis, and who knew about it, so I could update the House and obviously make the information available to the committee, and that's what I asked on Tuesday night my officials urgently to do, so that the full picture could have been put before both the House and the committee, and I'll make sure that the full picture is put before the committee.
Alistair Strapper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents are rightly appalled that someone who betrayed not just our country but every single victim of Jack Epstein was able to serve in such a prestigious position. Whatever the judgment in the security vetting file, that decision to appoint him was wrong, and I welcome the Prime Minister's owning an apology for that moment. But many of my constituents are also rightly concerned to learn that not a single democratically elected official in government was informed about that decision. Given this, what undertakings is the Prime Minister instigating right across government to ensure that in the future it's our democratic decision makers who are putting the full picture for these crucial judgments?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him? And Mr. Speaker, that is precisely why I've asked for the entire developed vetting process to be reviewed by Sir Adrian Fulford, and I've made it absolutely clear to this House and to the civil service that my strong view is that the information that was not provided to me could have been provided and should have been provided.
Mamrella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister wants us to focus on process and not his judgment. But this entire sorry episode is the direct result of his decision to make a direct appointment to one of the most senior roles in the FCDO of somebody who was wholly inappropriate for the role. So can the Prime Minister at least confirm to the House that this was a singular error of judgment, and that his number 10 operation has not proposed political appointee for any other senior role in the FCDO?
Prime Minister.
In relation to the decision, yes, it was my decision. It was an error of judgment, and that's why I've apologised to the victims of Epstein. I've done it again today, and right to do so. In relation to the second point of his question, whether any other political appointments, I will have to just check on that and get back to him, because I'm not. There are very many appointments made. There are very many appointments made to senior positions, and I will just check that for him.
Mr. Speaker, the House and the public understand the importance of independent security vetting and why sensitive personal information must be protected, but they are also shocked that decisions of such significance could be taken without the knowledge of the Prime Minister. I have worked closely with the Prime Minister and know how seriously he takes national security and accountability to this House. So can the Prime Minister set out what steps he will take to remove any ambiguity, so where there are serious concerns, those risks are flagged to ministers, ensuring that accountability to this House and to the country is always upheld?
Prime Minister.
I thank her for her question, Mr. Speaker. That is why last week the Chief Secretary removed suspended the power of the FCDO to make a recommendation or to take a decision contrary to the recommendation of UK SV.
Sir David Debs.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has twice rebuffed first the Leader of the Opposition, then the Leader of the Liberal Democrats, when they said that the then Cabinet Secretary's advice to the Prime Minister was to get the clearance before the announcement. So I'm going to read in one sentence from a document entitled Options for HMA Washington from the Cabinet Secretary of the day to him personally. It says, if this is the route you wish to take, you should give us the name of the person you would like to appoint, and we will develop a plan for them to acquire the necessary security clearances and do due diligence on any potential conflicts of interest or other issues of which you should be aware before confirming your choice. The House doesn't want to hear about what Mr. Wormholt said a year later. That was the advice then. Why didn't he follow it?
Mr. Speaker, he reads out the passage from Mr. Case's advice. The process that was followed was what I understood to be the usual process. In other words, the appointment was subject to the security vetting. It is why, when Sir Chris Wolmold looked at it in September, he addressed the question by reference back to Simon Case's letter, because I wanted to know the process that had been followed was the right process, and that is what Sir Chris Wolmold looked at. He looked at it expressly by reference to the Simon Case letter that has just been read out, and assured me that the right process was followed when he reviewed it.
Belter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Anybody who knows the Prime Minister will know full well that he would never, ever deliberately mislead this House. But the reality is this, Mr. Speaker, ex post facto vetting is utterly pointless when the appointment is political. And the trouble, Mr. Speaker, that we all face is that trust in the Prime Minister and in politics is diminishing as this sorry saga continues. So in the 17 days we have leading to those very important elections, never mind question, those very important elections, what does the Prime Minister propose to do to win back the trust of the country?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to his point about vetting in relation to political appointments, I don't agree, but I do agree that the due diligence for direct ministerial appointments should be the same as for any other appointments. It clearly wasn't, and that's why in September I ordered that it be changed in order to make sure it is the same process, whether it's a direct ministerial appointment or any other appointment. In relation to the country, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we remain focused on the cost of living and on dealing with the war on two fronts that we face in this country, and I intend to do that.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker. The harshest and most important truth in this entire process is that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom chose to proactively ignore the victims of Jeffrey Epstein when he made the political choice to put Peter Mandelson in as the UK's most senior diplomat in the United States of America, despite knowing that he had maintained a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein himself. We have since seen Peter Mandelson be investigated for potential misconduct in public office, and we, of course, now learn through the media that Peter Mandelson had failed his security vetting. The Prime Minister blames all of this, all of it, on the judgment of others. But I'm interested in his judgment. Does he believe himself to be gullible, incompetent, or both?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank him for his question. I've laid out the relevant facts. It is absolutely clear that nobody is suggesting that this information was made available to me. It clearly wasn't made available. It should have been made available, and I would not have made the appointment had it been made available. That is why I set out the facts in some considerable detail to the House, with relevant quotes from all the relevant players in this.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is being candid about some of the challenges in this process. I'm sure he will share the frustration across this House that revelations keep coming and this matter keeps coming back to Parliament. Now, he says that he has acted to prevent any further challenges in the vetting system for the government for senior appointments. Can he therefore give all of our constituents and this House the reassurance that he has no further sense there will be any challenges to any other senior appointments through the vetting process that this government has made?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that is precisely why I've asked for a review to be carried out of the security vetting. I have no reason to believe that to be the case, but I want to be assured about the security vetting process, and that's why I've asked Sir Adrian Fulford to look at it so he can give me that further reassurance. I will then, of course, pass that on to the House.
Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has just told us that after he sacked Peter Mandelson, he changed the process so that now an appointment cannot be announced until after security vetting is passed. Why did he do that if he didn't think there was a problem with the security vetting?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in September, it became clear to me that in relation to the due diligence that had been carried out by the Cabinet Office, Peter Mandelson had been asked questions by my staff and given answers which were not truthful. That was exposed by the Bloomberg emails. At that point, I became concerned about the entire process. I asked for the review of the process by Sir Chris Wormold, which he carried out, but I also made it immediately clear that I would change the due process so that whether it's direct ministerial appointments or any other appointments, the same process was gone through. And I also wanted to make it clear that I didn't think that it was right that appointments should be announced before security vetting was gone through in any circumstances, and therefore I changed it straight away.
Rachel Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents are deeply concerned about the appointment of Peter Mandelson, and they want to see complete transparency going forward. I'm really concerned to read that the civil servants in the Cabinet Office may have had this information about a month ago, and it has taken them this long to be able to be in a position where they can share the information with the democratically elected person making this appointment. What can the Prime Minister share with us today so that we don't have to face this type of issue going forward?
Prime Minister.
Can I address that head on? Because what happened was that the information came to the attention of senior civil servants who were in fact doing the compliance work on the humble address. When they saw the information about developed vetting, they took legal advice straight away to ask whether it was legal to disclose that to me. They got that advice, and as soon as the advice was given, they disclosed it to me straight away last Tuesday. That was the right and appropriate thing for them to do. There's no criticism of what they did.
Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that last September,
MI6's finding that Mandelson's compromising business interests was accurate. I mentioned it myself on September the 15th in 2025. He failed his security vetting. We also know the former Cabinet Secretary advised the Prime Minister to carry out security clearance for Mandelson before his appointment. It was reported in the Times yesterday that Mandelson was given strap, very, very highest security vetting, well beyond DV, despite being failed for DV. It is likely that the Americans will have serious questions about what secrets of theirs a compromised British ambassador might have accessed. Despite all this, we also know that the PM and Number 10 were utterly determined to appoint Mandelson as ambassador to DC, come hell or high water. My question is why?
Prime Minister. Can I assure her that I have ordered a review of any national security issues arising in relation to what I found out last Tuesday, and I'll obviously update the House when that review is complete.
Dr. Rupa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also thank the Prime Minister for his heartfelt statement. And, if we're judging parties on actions, not words, for reviving the post of anti-corruption czar. It was vacant for 3 of his predecessors, years and years, starting with Boris Johnson's lockdown breaches. So can I ask the Prime Minister, now that we have the heavyweight Margaret Hodge in post, what plans does he have for this broader policy area?
Well, I'm sure that Margaret Hodge will do a very good job in that role, as she's done in so many other roles previously.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Who first suggested to the Prime Minister that Mandelson should be appointed as our ambassador to the United States, or was it just his own idea? Did it never cross his mind that Mandelson was at risk of failing the vetting process? And before sacking Oliver Robbins last week, did the Prime Minister ask him why he overruled the verdict of the security vetters, and if so, what was his explanation?
I did ask him, and I didn't accept his explanation. That's why I sacked him.
Rachel Musk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the beginning of February, in February 2026, we learnt that Peter Mandelson had shared highly sensitive government information with Jeffrey Epstein from the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. At that juncture, if I was in his shoes, I would have been forensic in recognising a security risk and wanting detailed answers. What's not adding up for me is why we are now in mid-April before we get this information, and why the Prime Minister didn't drill down to ensure that we had the security information, which clearly we learnt that Peter Mandelson had breached.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it was at that point that I did ask, order the review of the security vetting, because I was concerned that it had failed. In fact, because of information I wasn't given, it hadn't failed. It had actually given the recommendation that clearance should be denied. The fact that when I ordered a review of UK SV, senior officials in the Foreign Office didn't at that stage, if at no other stage, bring to my attention the information they hadn't told me is astonishing, because I was ordering a review of the process, which which looked as though it had failed, when in fact it had flagged the relevant concerns.
Sir Oliver Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to the point from my honourable friend, the member for New Forest West, I think the Prime Minister does owe it to the House to tell us what Sir Ollie Robbins' response to him was when he said he'd overruled that advice, because in my experience, senior officials are actually very keen to deliver on the wishes of ministers, particularly a newly elected Prime Minister. And my concern here is that implicitly, as other members have made the point, Sir Ollie Robbins was responding to a desire from the Prime Minister, because it was perfectly clear in all of the newspapers, the allegations are out there about Peter Mandelson, but the Prime Minister decided to proceed anyway. The official wished to deliver on the desire of the Minister. That's why he overruled the advice, and I fear also gave him the Prime Minister a degree of plausible deniability.
Prime Minister.
Let me answer that in relation to Sir Ollie. Let me start by saying he's had a distinguished career, and I must say that, and I do say that. I still, notwithstanding that, he should have provided this information to me, and he could have provided it to me. He's giving evidence tomorrow, but I can say to the House that when I spoke to him on Thursday, his view to me was that he couldn't provide this information to me because he wasn't allowed to provide the information to me. I don't want to put words in his mouth because it's very important he gives his own evidence. In relation to the question that's being asked of me, when I said why wasn't this shared with me, he did. I've been asked what questions I put to him, and I've been asked the answer.
You're listening to Talk. What you weren't noticing, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and drive time began about 35 minutes ago. We've been sitting in the studio monitoring this extraordinary process, this extraordinary session in the House of Commons. We're waiting, actually, for Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, to ask his question. We've had Kemi Badenoch, of course. We've had Ed Davey. We've had Stephen Flynn. Where is Farage? We're waiting for him. A lot of backbenchers seem to be getting their say at the moment. In the meantime, I'm with political commentator Benedict Spence. Your thoughts so far, Benedict?
It's been a bit of a skewering for the Prime Minister, and we have to say it's been, quite aside from trying to get to the bottom of this, which the Prime Minister is completely trying to avoid answering any question sensibly, it has, if nothing else, been rather entertaining to see a bit of a carousel of people with no love lost for him being given the opportunity to ask these questions. And it's not just entertainment value, they are also very pointed questions. I think, that perhaps the most extraordinary situation of all, or, sight of all, was seeing Diane Abbott asking her question.
Let's go to Lee Anderson. He's asking a question now.
Thursday night, as a result of the information I had and the exchanges I had, I made it clear that I no longer had confidence in him.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem the Prime Minister's got is no one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the members withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
No, order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave. Phil Brettle.
Mr. Speaker, when Sir Ollie Robbins came before the Foreign Affairs Committee on the 3rd of November last year, he was asked by a man...
OK, Lee Anderson has been... We think Nigel Farage probably is not in the chamber, but clearly Lee Anderson there carrying the baton for Reform UK. He's been thrown out for suggesting that Keir Starmer couldn't lie straight in bed.
Yeah.
They have this ridiculous ritual, don't they? This ridiculous convention that they're not allowed to say lie, liar, or you're a liar, even though most of them are practiced liars.
Yeah.
And we're listening to some of this, all of these acronyms, the FCDO and the APC and process was false. You think, what kind of world do these people live in? Diane Abbott, of all people, struck the right chord. She said people don't want to know about process. They don't want to know about all these acronyms and this weird bureaucratic world that you dwell in, Prime Minister. They want to know, are you telling the truth and what the hell went wrong here? Basic.
I think it says a lot when you've got this storied, highly successful former international human rights lawyer, head of the CPS, this, that and the other, every accolade, who has just been pretty much done over by Diane Abbott with a very simple set of questioning, and he's unable to answer any of this. I think that that's the key thing here, is that we have been listening to a couple of MPs grandstanding, a couple of people, taking this as an opportunity to put the boot in. But the extraordinary thing is absolutely nothing that comes out of Starmer's mouth is convincing anybody. I think perhaps the most interesting question was when he was asked, what was it that Ollie Robbins said to you, and why did you then take his resignation? And the Prime Minister just didn't answer. He just said, "Oh, I didn't like his explanation, so I sacked him." And just thinking, who on earth are you trying to kid here?
As you say, he just said. Yes, he was asked, did Ollie Robbins tell you why he didn't pass you this information? And Starmer said, yes, he did, and I didn't like his explanation, that's why I fired him. So Dowden stood up, Oliver Dowden stood up quite reasonably and said, well, you just said you sacked him because you didn't like the explanation.
Yeah.
What was that explanation? And Starmer refused to answer. So here he is trying to say, I'm going to bring a new spirit of transparency into the government, into Westminster, and not answering a basic question like this, still keeping secrets, still digging a big hole for himself.
Still trying to play the lawyer, basically. He's just trying to avoid skewering himself. He's trying to avoid saying anything that's going to get him into even more trouble. And I think it's pretty brazen, therefore, that when faced with a question, a pretty straightforward question like that, he just completely avoids answering. He doesn't even try to dress it up by taking it off at a different tangent. He just didn't answer the question. And I think, Lee Anderson, obviously he's broken convention by saying what he has about the Prime Minister being a liar and not able to lie straight in bed. And he's sort of, he's paid the minor toll for that of having to be kicked out. But do you know what? Everybody who's watched this is thinking the same thing. None of this adds up. And of course, we're all sat here waiting, thinking, what is Ollie Robbins, who is addressing MPs tomorrow, going to say? If the Prime Minister won't say what it is that Ollie Robbins said, well, we're all going to be tuning in to hear what he had to say tomorrow.
I mean, down the line, probably not now, but this bunch of lawyers who sit in the House of Commons listening to the sound of their own windbag voices, they got to be told, why don't you stick your conventions where the sun don't shine? Why don't you start talking like normal human beings? Why, if you think the Prime Minister's lying, aren't you allowed to say so? Why, by the way, while we're on the subject, aren't they allowed to ever discuss the royal family that we have to pay for? These conventions of the House have got to be ditched. There's something out of the Victorian age. They are ridiculous, and Starmer is hiding behind them. Let's remind ourselves of the essence of the statement that Starmer began soon after 3:30 this afternoon.
Mr. Speaker, last Tuesday evening, the 14th of April, I found out for the first time that on the 29th of January 2025, before Peter Mandelson took up his position as ambassador, the Foreign Office officials granted him developed vetting clearance against the specific recommendation of the United Kingdom security vetting that developed vetting clearance should be denied. I immediately instructed officials in Downing Street and the Cabinet Office to urgently establish the facts on my authority. I wanted to know who made the decision, on what basis, who knew, and Mr. Speaker, I wanted that information for the precise and explicit purpose of updating this House. Because this is information I should have had a long time ago.
Do you know what the elephant in the room is with all that tosh that he's spewing there? This is clearly a man desperately trying to save his own backside, with only a minimal degree of success, I would suggest. But he keeps saying, I was not informed, this decision was made, and Ollie Robbins of the Foreign Office did not inform me, did he ask? Did he ever ask? He seems to be sort of skipping over that rather important nuance. Did he not say, we're OK, are we, with the security vetting process?
Yeah.
Has he passed that? Because the indication from what he's saying is he just went ahead with this appointment without ever asking whether or not he passed the vetting process. And one more thing, Benedict, a lot of these MPs, a lot of these Labour apologists are saying, well, of course, and Ollie Robbins is maintaining this as well. We understand. We'll find out tomorrow. He's before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee tomorrow at 9 a.m, so that's going to be pretty box office stuff. But he is maintaining that he had, and his advisors and Labour apologists are saying that there was no legal requirement for Ollie Robbins to pass on this information because, of course, it would be very wrong of cabinet ministers, even prime ministers, to receive very intimate, private information about candidates for a job, whether or not they fail this vetting process. Fair enough. But what they seem to be extending that to is that the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers had no right to know whether or not he passed or failed.
Well,
that is absurd.
It is, and one wonders if perhaps Starmer, because Starmer is obviously aware of all the conventions and across all of the stuff, because this is who he is.
That's his interest.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing he really enjoys. He will have known this, and perhaps that is why he didn't ask, so that he could give himself this plausible deniability. He knew it was not going to be forthcoming, perhaps, and he knew, having asked, look into this man for me, or, you know, I'm going to put this man up for this job, there needs to be a process. He sends that there going, but if I don't ask, nobody will tell me, so if it all does blow back on me, I have that cover, because the convention means that it's not going to come to me off the bat. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, and that he is then trying to do the whole procedural thing of basically thinking to himself, well, that's me fine, because technically I've done nothing wrong. But as Diane Abbott and many others have said, nobody cares about that. Nobody cares if that's the case. Nobody cares if procedurally you're correct.
Yes.
Morally, you're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, as we know, the conundrum for the Prime Minister throughout this saga, which exploded, was it last Thursday, wasn't it? The Guardian having come across this story on the Tuesday, Prime Minister keeping it secret through Prime Minister's question time, undeniably a breach of the ministerial code. He should have told the House. But the conundrum for the Prime Minister is simply this. Did he know and therefore lie to the House throughout? Or did he know, or did he not know, and he's therefore completely incompetent and not fit to hold this high office?
If I could put it this way, I suspect that he deliberately and by design didn't know. I suspect that he is being dishonest by omission and by aversion, which is not the same as outright lying, but this is how the clever legal mind will think, this is how I get out of the situation, by engineering it so that I don't necessarily have the information that I suspect is the case, but nobody's officially told me, therefore I'm not responsible for it. To which, of course, everybody else would sat there and go, that's an appalling state of affairs, and that's a dreadful way to run a government. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if that were the case.
Yeah, insofar as he's a complete and utter lawyer, we know that. He's really, really a complete and utter lawyer. And potentially, throughout this, from the day one, he's been trying to maintain what they call in legal circles a plausible distance.
Yeah.
So you cannot trace the actual mistakes back to him. You can trace them back to people around him, but not to him, which still points to a Prime Minister who's not fit to be in office. He needed to be across this. He needed to know whether or not Mandelson had passed the vetting process, and if he was so incurious he didn't ask, that is an abrogation of duty that's off the scale.
Oh, hugely. And the thing is, everybody knows. Everybody knows now that this man is basically done. It's a slow-acting poison. The story isn't going away. Put it this way, there's no way he will be able to stand again at a general election and the public look at him and go, we trust him more than X, Y, Z number of other people on the ballot. But the issue now is, I think, it's perhaps to some degree a lot of Labour frontbenchers will be sat there thinking, I really hope he hasn't lied to Parliament, and I really hope that they can't pin that on him, because actually we need him to stay in place just a little bit longer with the local elections coming up and the wave of inflation that's going to come as a result of the Iran war. We're still in that weird situation where everybody can see this man's authority is shot to bits, nobody likes him, nobody wants him to be there, we're seeing him squirm. But the best option for everybody with an ounce of ambition in the Labour Party is to keep him there as a flak jacket to just soak up a little bit more damage.
Yeah, I think that may well be how it plays out. But tomorrow morning, as I say, before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Ollie Robbins, sacked summarily last week after a distinguished career in the higher echelons of Whitehall, a total civil service mandarin, chief civil servant at the Foreign Office, suddenly sacked told by the Prime Minister that he'd lost all confidence in him. Well, Ollie Robbins is not happy about this, to say the least. He's going before the Select Committee tomorrow, and the word is he may well go nuclear. Now, he could say, it may be within his knowledge that he can say things that will make it impossible for the Prime Minister not to resign. It's possible, isn't it?
It is entirely possible, and I guess then we just have to wait and see on what... Well, basically, what does Ollie Robbins believe is the future for both him and for this government? Because ultimately, if this is the end of his career, as you say, career-long civil servant, highly respected, and he's been sacked sort of summarily like this to throw a failed Prime Minister a lifeline, why would you hold back in this situation? Who are you being loyal to in that position? Because this man, Keir Starmer, is not going to be Prime Minister that much longer. So it's not like you're particularly destabilising a government or anything like that. Don't you owe it to us to give him that push?
Good point, Benedict. Let's go back to the House. Ian Duncan-Smith, former Tory leader, is about to ask a question.
What they did in this case.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Speaker, I want to return again to the real nub of what this is. The Prime Minister knew, as we all knew, about his representation as to who should actually be the ambassador. In this particular case, a man that had been sacked twice out of cabinet, but more than that, in the public domain at the time were all his links clear with the Chinese companies and his meetings with Xi. Furthermore, his time in Sistema, where he stayed there after 2014 in the invasion, not just for that, but his meetings with Putin, and of course his relationship with Deripaska, who was negotiating on the tax levels and the tariffs on aluminium when he was the EU commissioner responsible. So with all of that going on, his announcement of this man into the ambassadorial position, why did he think that therefore he didn't know something about him? He knew he was corrupt, he was corrupting, and he was the wrong choice. Surely that's why he overturned Case's review, Case's advice to have the review before he made the decision.
Exactly. Prime Minister.
No, that's not the case. But the judgment call to appoint him was my judgment call, and that was an error, and I've apologised for it, particularly to the victims of Epstein. But the developed vetting process was carried out in the way I've indicated to the House. I should have been told at the time of the recommendation. Had I been told, I wouldn't have made the appointment.
Neil Duncan-Jordan.
So, Benedict, you know, had I been told, I wouldn't have made the appointment. Let's just recap. Peter Mandelson has been on the rack, or had been on the rack twice sacked from the cabinet, but the Labour cabinet, Blair's cabinet. First time Blair, second time I believe Gordon Brown. First time for taking a big mortgage loan from interest-free, I do believe, from Geoffrey Robertson, the Labour Party's in-house multi-millionaire. He bought a house in Notting Hill, didn't tell anyone, and then had to declare it. He had to be sacked. It was the scandal, hilariously called Notting Hill Gate. He then went on to be restored to the cabinet, and then had to be fired for trying to get the very rich billionaire Indian Hinduja brothers, tycoons there in India, British passports under the counter. He had to be sacked for that. And then we had of course the Epstein affair. So all through that. Then Starmer admits in the House, when asked by Badenoch, did you know that Peter Mandelson had continued a friendship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein while he was in jail, and had stayed at his apartment in Manhattan while he was in jail for child sex offences? Did you know that, Prime Minister? Yes, I did. So he knew that. He said that in the House of Commons. He knew about this guy's background, but from what we're hearing, he didn't feel it was worth asking the security services whether or not this man had passed the vetting process. That is either a lie or it is the height of incompetence, unbelievable negligence of duty.
And the thing is, it doesn't really matter which one it is, because either are enough to give you the shove out of the door. You shouldn't be Prime Minister if you're making these kind of calls, getting it so badly wrong. Ian Duncan-Smith, I thought, also raised something else that was very interesting, which is Mandelson's links to Chinese firms.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody knows that any Chinese firm with any kind of money to speak of is directly linked to the Chinese government. And that has, again, serious security implications. So that in itself would have been another reason to have done a big investigation into Mandelson, because this was not, hidden to anybody. Everybody knew that he was.
There's one other elephant in the room, a massive elephant in the room, which I cannot stress enough, that all these MPs have missed the point on. They should not forget this. This is really, really important. Last September the 12th, in the Independent newspaper, on its metaphorical front page, it's an online paper, of course, a Labour supporting paper, David Maddox, the political editor there, wrote that Mandelson had failed the vetting process. That was their splash. He got in touch with number 10 Downing Street, the then head of communications, Tim Allen, asked him all about this. Tim Allen got back to David Maddox and said, as far as we're concerned, due process was followed. Maddox took that as the sign that he could write the story. He wrote it September the 12th. Last year, the front page of a national newspaper, that Peter Mandelson failed the vetting process, and the Prime Minister and the Cabinet claim they knew nothing of this. This is ridiculous, folks. Let's take a look at what Starmer said his reaction was when he found out, when he allegedly, at the point when he alleges he found out he'd failed the vetting process. Let's have a look.
The Foreign Office officials granted him developed vetting clearance against the specific recommendation of the United Kingdom security vetting that developed vetting clearance should be denied. Not only that, the Foreign Office officials who made that decision did not pass this information to me, to the Foreign Secretary, to her predecessor, the Deputy Prime Minister, to any other minister, or even to the former Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Wormold. I found this staggering, and therefore last Tuesday I immediately instructed officials in Downing Street and the Cabinet Office to urgently establish the facts on my authority. I wanted to know who made the decision, on what basis.
Blah, blah, blah. Again, if one of these MPs, if I was a backbencher, thank the Lord I'm not, sir, I would stand up and say, does the Prime Minister read the newspapers? And if so, did you read the Independent last September the 12th, when that newspaper revealed that Peter Mandelson had failed the vetting process? Did you read it? Because him pretending now, Benedict, he had no clue until last Tuesday, that just doesn't stack up. Tim Allen would have passed this information on to the Prime Minister, sure as night follows day.
Absolutely, they would have done. Multiple people would have been across this as number 10, because, of course, this is modern government, modern politics. They care a lot more about headlines and front pages than they care about actual policies. So it's just inexplicable, the suggestion that he had no idea. As you said, you knew about it, lots of other people knew about it.
Because I read the paper.
Exactly. Those of us who do this for a living all knew that it was on that front page. And the thing is, it's just the fact that even without that, there was so much else going on. The fact that the Financial Times had been talking about it for however many years. And again, I know that the Financial Times and the Independent's online, the Financial Times is, behind closed doors for a lot of people. But nonetheless, these were stories in the mainstream press.
The Financial Times did it as well.
Yeah, they were in circulation. People were aware. Even when he became the ambassador, I know that there was a big push, lots of MPs, lots of commentators, lots of journalists saying, oh, he's ever so smart as Peter Mandelson, this will be great, he'll be able to talk to Donald Trump in a language he understands. But enough people were also saying at the time, this does not sit well. There are far too many awkward links for this man. He has to answer some questions. And it did just feel as if it was almost a fait accompli. And now it turns out it was a fait accompli. The Prime Minister didn't ask about the results of the security vetting.
Why didn't he ask? Why didn't he ask? This is absolutely ridiculous. And I would say that the last hour and a half or so in Parliament for the Prime Minister have been pretty disastrous. His own MPs lining up to ask him very difficult questions. You can tell the Labour Party are just as upset with him as the rest of the House. And I think given it is a long-running dispute with Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, former Labour MP, of course independent now as the Speaker, but there's no love lost there, because they had this massive row last week because Hoyle said to him, why don't you actually answer a few questions? It's called the Prime Minister's question. Keir Starmer lost his temper, and you could see that old Sir Lindsay Hoyle had chosen a load of people who Starmer would least like to be asked questions by. You know, Diane Abbott, Emily Thornberry,
John McDonnell,
Carl Turner, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, before he threw him out, he also had the good grace to pick Lee Anderson, which was very entertaining.
Let me just ask the audience, was Lee Anderson, the Reform UK MP, right to state that our Prime Minister couldn't lie straight in bed? 0344 499 1000, and should he have been thrown out of the chamber for that? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. Big thanks to Benedict Spence. Back after the news with Isabel Oakeshott.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm going to go to Isabel Oakeshott in just a second, but breaking news, Kemi Badenoch has applied for an emergency debate in the Commons on the Peter Mandelson appointment tomorrow. This debate is likely to be granted and will allow MPs to debate what Ollie Robbins says at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So that will happen at 9. I'd anticipate a couple of hours maybe, and then it looks as if there will be a heated Commons debate as to what Mr. or Sir Ollie has to say. As I told you earlier, we are hearing that the sacked Foreign Office top civil servant, the Mandarin at the civil service at the Foreign Office, we are hearing that he is set to go nuclear, that he will not take this lying down, and that could plunge the Prime Minister into an even deeper world of trouble than he is in already. Before we go to Isabel, here's a voice note from Peter on Starmer's statement.
Well, the one question, right, that hasn't been raised at all yet is why Scandalson was even offered the position in the first place. He has a history of being a wrong-un spanning back many decades. So why did a Prime Minister even consider offering such a top role to such a wrong-un in the first place? It'd be like getting a convicted burglar and offering him a job with the police. It's absolutely outrageous. Starmer still won't answer any questions. Go over and over again with all of that, right? Starmer needs to resign, and he needs to resign now.
Yeah, Peter, in all of our dreams, but excellent voice note. You're absolutely right. What was this absolute obsession with getting Peter Mandelson into our embassy in Washington, making him our ambassador to the United States of America? I can see the advantages. I can see why they want a sort of famously silver-tongued guy like Mandelson, without too many morals to get in the way of what needs to be done when you're making deals with countries like United States and countries around the world. I get that. So, yes, an enthusiasm to get him in. But what happened was more than an enthusiasm. It was like a mania. We've got to get this in. He's failed his vetting process. He doesn't stack up when it comes to security. Don't care. Get him in. Get him in. Get him in. Why? 0344 499 1000. Right, let's go over to our excellent international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, who's been watching all the proceedings patiently. Welcome, Isabel. Before we talk, let's remind ourselves of the essence of what Keir Starmer said in his statement around about an hour and a half ago in the House of Commons. Take it away, Keir.
So let me be very clear. The recommendation in the Peter Mandelson case could and should have been shared with me before he took up his post. Mr. Speaker, let me make a second point. If I had known before he took up his post that UKSV recommendation was that developed vetting clearance should be denied, I would not have gone ahead with the appointment.
Well, Isabel, your feelings on what we've just seen, well, it's still going on, a couple of hours now in the House of Commons, Starmer's reckoning, when Lee Anderson, the Reform UK MP, stood up and talked for the whole nation, and basically said that guy, that Prime Minister guy, is a liar. And Hoyle, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, said you can't use that word in Parliament. Why not, for God's sake? But apparently the convention is you can't say the word lie or liar. So Anderson, to his credit, said, I'm sorry, I'm not retracting that. That guy couldn't lie straight in bed, and was clearly thrown out. But look, let's not beat about the bush. Lee Anderson is saying what we all think. We don't think this guy's telling the truth, do we?
That was quite a dramatic moment, and it turns out, I hadn't realised this, that you don't just have to leave the Commons if you do that. I thought you just had to leave the debating chamber.
Yeah, go on.
You actually have to leave the entire parliamentary estate. I imagine that Lee Anderson is, I don't know, maybe having a pint somewhere.
He's over the St Stephen's Arms, isn't he?
having spoken up for the nation.
Yeah.
So I watched the debate, as you said, it's still going on. I was struck by just how many Labour MPs were not being very helpful to Keir Starmer. I mean, what it amounted to was Keir Starmer basically trying to say that he was hopping mad because he wasn't told what he should have been told. And in the light of that, he's ordered a bunch of reviews. That's the summary of his entire statement. I'm mad, it beggars belief, I should have been told, and now I'm going to make sure this never happens again. Is that going to be enough? Question mark. Far from it. I don't think so. As I say, a MP after MP, notably, generally those MPs on the hard left of the party. So we saw, for example, John McDonnell stand up saying that this has been very damaging to the party that he's been a member of. I think he said 50 years.
Yeah, he did. 50 years, yeah.
And you had Diana, but I'm never quite sure whether she's still in the Labour Party. I don't think she is. But elements of the hard left were not giving him any truck on this. And there were others who are not quite, not always the usual suspect troublemakers, who are also standing up there saying, look, this just isn't good enough. And frustratingly, there were a number of MPs that asked the tricky questions, but they asked them amongst other questions, which allowed Starmer to pick and choose which one he answered. And one of the questions was just very simple, which is, why, after everything you knew about Peter Mandelson, why did you actually want to appoint him? And I'd love to know the answer to that question. John McDonnell implied that the reason that Starmer was so desperate to appoint Mandelson was because essentially Starmer owed his whole premiership to Peter Mandelson's support. Starmer not having had much of a political base without Mandelson's help. So I thought that, I think I've heard that before from McDonnell, but it was quite interesting. So where does this go? Well, as you just said, there's breaking news now of demands for an urgent debate tomorrow, and we've got the Ollie Robbins testimony before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee.
Yeah, we're hearing Ollie Robbins is, as you can imagine, is not in a good mood, and he's prepared to go nuclear. So we don't know what Ollie will say or what he has, in his armoury to hit the Prime Minister with. But it's potentially possible that Ollie Robbins could say stuff tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that finishes Starmer, that literally finishes him, depending on what Robbins is going to say. But it is potential that the Prime Minister may be finished tomorrow, and what a mess he's got himself into. So when we've been listening for the last 2 hours with him saying, I'm absolutely furious, I'm staggeringly angry that I haven't been told this. Look, so that's his story. They didn't tell me, and I'm furious. This is a guy, Peter Mandelson, with a background of scandal. He's been in scandal longer than most of us have been alive. Not me, but most people have been alive. And the Prime Minister didn't see fit to ask whether or not he passed the vetting process. So he's saying, the Foreign Office didn't tell me. Did you ask, Prime Minister? Because I don't think he did. And if that is the case, that is an abrogation of duty that proves this man is just not up to the job of being Prime Minister.
And it was really interesting that Kemi Badenoch, in the list of, I think, 6 questions that she shared with the Prime Minister well in advance to perhaps to try to tilt the odds of him actually answering any of them, raised a very intriguing point about Mandelson's connections with a heavily Putin-linked defence firm. They're fairly, not immediately recent connections, but she said were from around the time of the invasion of Crimea, so that puts it at around 2014. And we know that the concerns about his vetting were linked further to his commercial relationships with the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, you couldn't make this up, could you? This is a Labour Party that constantly harangues Reform UK for fictional links to the Kremlin. And yet there's Keir Starmer having overruled security vetting, knowingly, unknowingly, choose whatever you want to believe, of a guy that's linked to 2 of the most hostile regimes to the UK in the world. Absolutely. Now, I was just talking to Benedict Spence, and for me, the massive elephant in this room is this.
If I was a backbench MP, I would have stood up just now and said, does the Prime Minister read the newspapers? Does he read the front pages of the newspapers? Do his number 10 staff read the papers? If so, how can he and they claim they knew nothing about Peter Mandelson failing the vetting process until last Tuesday, when it was the splash in the Independent newspaper all over the metaphorical front page, because it's an online paper, last September the 12th, written by its political editor David Maddox? How on earth can this Prime Minister and his staff and this cabinet claim they did not know, had no inkling that Mandelson had failed the vetting process till last Tuesday? That is just a crock of crap.
I mean, I just don't find it credible. You know, that story is so explosive, you know, before it became a media story. The knowledge that Peter Mandelson had failed vetting was so explosive. It's just beggars belief, to use words Keir Starmer himself used, that no one would have shared that information with someone, if not the Prime Minister directly, someone very close to him. I just don't believe it. I don't think others believe it. And I don't think a series of reviews is going to get him out of this one.
Totally right, Isabel. Now, while I've got you, going forward this week, you have an amazing exclusive about the migrant crisis. You and your colleague, Christian Drogan. Christian has been over to Belgium to focus on the new epicentre, if you like, of the migrant crisis. So more and more migrants are either coming across direct from Belgium, a very dangerous 5-hour voyage, or more often they're getting on boats in Belgium where the police are very friendly, don't really bother them at all, and they're coming across down the coast to the northern coast of France to carry on, to be picked up by the border force and taken into the generous bosom of Britain's generosity. So you have Christian has been there. Before we get your thoughts, let's take a little look at some of the footage that Christian managed to obtain just standing on a beach in Belgium. Watch this.
I'm stood on Newport Beach in Belgium. The migrants left just halfway down that beach to the pier. The first one is out there, absolutely packed. Police boat, Belgian law enforcement behind it. Sorry, I'm just out of breath. And then there's your second boat, absolutely jam-packed. There you go, off the coast of Belgium. There's another one now. That's the second one I've seen this morning.
Well, as Christian put it there, Isabel, there you go. Two dinghies, small boats, absolutely packed with migrants. A great big patrol boat, not really doing much about them. Christian reporting that the Belgian police on the beaches are very, very friendly. They don't stop anyone. They'll chat to reporters. They'll chat to journalists. But this is the new face of the migrant crisis. Rather than be intercepted by the French police, not very many, it doesn't happen very often, but around about a third of the time, the French cops, les gendarmes, do stop the migrants leaving. They're now going to Belgium, where they can leave no questions asked. So quite a development.
This is a really worrying new front in the battle against the small boats, the losing battle for Britain against the small boats. And we were very careful about what week we chose to go out to Belgium. We looked at weather forecasts. We've got a lot of contacts now, Christian and I, in the small boat rescue services and coast guards and so on. And we understood, we were tipped off that there were going to be quite a lot of departures last week because the weather was very, very calm. And sure enough, you know, Christian, dedicated to the cause, he was up every night through the nights. These departures tend to happen in the undercover of darkness. And we were able to film at different times of day, sometimes at dawn, those boats taking off. And here's the massive scandal, I think. And it's something I know, Kev, that you've been it's been on your radar. That what the Belgian authorities are doing is A, failing to stop the boats like everybody else, but B, what they're doing is that they're escorting the boats into French waters, at which point the French should say, well, sorry, you know, bugger off, mind my language, bugger off, back you go to Belgium from whence you came. But instead, the French are then triangulating this business and taking the migrants into English waters. Midway line. So the French, those honest brokers that we pay so many millions of pounds for, are actually aiding and abetting the illegality out of Belgium. What a lovely arrangement this is. How nicely it suits both the Belgians, and I have to agree, they were very friendly, very cooperative, unlike the nightmare gendarme in France. But, you know, this is all very convenient, isn't it, for the Belgians? They push them into French waters, the French push them into our waters. Who's the mug in all of this? Well, it's us, the British.
It's us, yeah. They end up here in the promised land. Well, look, this is exciting stuff, Isabel. So you'll be on. You and Christian will be on over the next couple of days to complete this excellent report. This is an amazing development, folks. The migrant crisis just got a whole lot worse. They're now coming out of Belgium in their droves. Big thanks to you, Isabel, and we'll talk tomorrow. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talks International editor. Let's go back to the only story of today. Keir Starmer still in the Commons, squirming, asked by MPs more and more difficult questions. I've just seen Robert Jenrick from the Reform Party has just been in the frame. But before we move on, we're going to talk to Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, in just a minute. Very incredible Westminster veteran. We'll get his take on all of this. Even for someone like Trevor, I think these scenes are almost unprecedented. But let's first speak to Steve in Scunthorpe. Hello, Steve.
Hello, how are you? There was a question asked by one of the MPs of, you know, he has apologised for his poor judgment in
appointing him in the first place,
appointing him in the first place. And he did ask how many other people, you know, have this judgment and that. And I think Starmer's reply was, well, we'll look into that. Hasn't he just sacked 4 high-ranking people in his government?
You know, well, yes, this is a guy, right? This is a guy. Don't forget, he made a speech recently saying, when I was DPP, I was in charge of a staff of 8,000 people, and I never blamed my staff for anything. I always took responsibility. I never turned on my staff. Well, in the last couple of months, he's been turning on everyone he can to save his own backside. In fact, there are at least 6 major names who have lost their highly paid jobs as Starmer tries to hang on to the premiership, pointing the finger at anyone else. It wasn't me, Gov, it was his fault, it was her fault, it was his fault, it was her fault, now it's Ollie Robbins' fault. This guy is doing everything he can to shirk the responsibility that was his.
But wasn't he one who appointed those people?
Well, yeah,
so
of course. Yeah.
It was his poor judgment.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that.
So many people.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, it's not just Mandelson. It's all these other people who I believe were probably shouldn't have been fired.
No, I don't think they should. It's looking
four guys.
It's looking to me as if Ollie Robbins shouldn't have been fired, but we will find out. It's going to be box office tomorrow. Get your popcorn, Steve. 9 a.m. Ollie Robbins is in the Foreign Affairs Select Committee giving his side of the story. That will be bombshell stuff. Steve from Scunthorpe, great call. Let's talk to Robert in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Kev. What I've just witnessed is an absolute masterclass in flannel from.
You're not saying much, yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm starting to. I must be coming down with something. But I'm starting to have a bit of an admiration for him. I used to sell dodgy perfume out of a cardboard box in Oxford Street years and years and years ago, and that's what he reminds me of. I mean, what you've got to remember is all of this is a deflection. We are living in the age of unaccountability. He won't resign. They won't get rid of him because all they do is just blackmail him and say, well, I'll call a general election and we'll all be out of a job. And nothing will happen to Peter Mandelson. I guarantee you. We're in an age of unaccountability. That's the trouble.
Well, let's see what happens to Mandelson. Of course, he's being investigated by the police. I would say it doesn't look that great for him, but we'll see. But as for the Prime Minister, in terms of accountability, if there was any justice in this world, he would have already resigned. Even if he didn't know that Mandelson had failed the vetting process, he should resign for that. He should know. He's the Prime Minister. You can't go round appointing people as our ambassador to the United States of America without knowing whether or not they passed the security vetting process. That's an abrogation of duty. He should go for that alone. But if he's lying, and they did know about him failing the vetting process, then of course he has to go.
No, he's been bitten by the bug of statesmanship. He likes going around.
Statesmanship? I wouldn't call it that. I wouldn't call it that.
I mean, you know, he thinks he's a bit of a statesman. He's going backwards and forwards to Europe.
A complete statesman, yeah.
Now, what you've just said about Belgium and France collaborating, these are the people he wants to get in bed with.
Oh, of course he does. Yeah. He wants us to rejoin the EU in all but name. It's as simple as that. The guy he wants to betray. He wants to betray democracy.
Lined up.
Yeah.
I think he's got a top job lined up.
Well, I don't think he cares. He doesn't care, Robert. He's a multi-millionaire already. Doesn't give a damn whether or not he gets a top job lined up. I don't think he cares. But the point is, right now, he should take responsibility for this egregious breach of national security in appointing Peter Mandelson. But he won't. He's busy blaming other people. But he can't cling on for long. I don't think he can cling on for long. I think this is it for him. But let's see, wait and see what happens tomorrow. It's going to be interesting. Robert, good call. Robert in Hertfordshire. Let's go to a break, and when we come back, let's get Trevor Kavanagh's view on these extraordinary proceedings that we've been seeing now for 2.5 hours in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister's day of reckoning, his moment of reckoning as he faces questions from MPs, ministers, all across the House. What did you know? When did you know? Why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? Let's talk to Trevor about that next. Stay tuned.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to political columnist, former political editor of the Sun newspaper, the great Trevor Kavanagh. Welcome, Trevor.
Hi, Kevin.
Well, quite a day. Before we talk, we've been playing this clip. This is the gist of what the Prime Minister said in his statement to the House now about 2 hours ago at 3:30.
The Foreign Office officials granted him developed vetting clearance against the specific recommendation of the United Kingdom security vetting that developed vetting clearance should be denied. Not only that, the Foreign Office officials who made that decision did not pass this information to me, to the Foreign Secretary, to her predecessor, the Deputy Prime Minister, to any other minister, or even to the former Cabinet Secretary, Sir Chris Wormold. I found this staggering, and therefore last Tuesday I immediately instructed officials in Downing Street and the Cabinet Office to urgently establish the facts on my authority. I wanted to know who made the decision, on what basis.
So, Trevor, I keep saying this. There's a massive elephant in the room here. He keeps saying, I find it staggering. I'm furious that the Foreign Office didn't tell me. Oh, it's so important. Now, he was in the process of appointing Peter Mandelson to the key diplomatic role, the top diplomatic role of Ambassador to the United States of America. He knew of Mandelson's scandal-prone backgrounds, twice fired from the cabinet. He had established, he knew that Peter Mandelson kept up a friendship with the jailed paedophile Jeffrey Epstein while he was in prison. He even stayed at his Manhattan apartment while he was serving his sentence. Starmer admitted in the House, yes, he knew about that. So he knew all of these aspects to the background of Mandelson. Scandal-prone, sacked twice from the cabinet, kept up a friendship with a convicted paedophile American. He knew all of this and then appointed him without ever once asking whether or not he'd failed or passed the security vetting process. Because he just said, I'm furious they didn't tell me. What he omits to tell us is, did he ever ask? He clearly did not ask. That in itself is a massive abrogation of duty that makes this man unfit to be Prime Minister.
Well, I think that particular point you just made, Kevin, became clear more or less within weeks of him becoming Prime Minister and has continued to be proven almost on a weekly basis. What we saw today was effectively the House of Commons as a form of courtroom in which Keir Starmer is on trial and whose word can be questioned and challenged. And if he does mislead the House of Commons, or if it's found that he has, then he's in very serious trouble. It's a career-ending journey. But as he said to himself, to enormous applause, that everyone will find what has been said by him incredible. And there are guffaws throughout the House of Commons. And he was then faced with a barrage of questions, which I think really hit the nail on the head. There was one particularly from Diane Abbott, who, of course, is no friend of Keir Starmer, asking, just as you just asked, why on earth didn't he ask? As Prime Minister, he certainly could have asked whether or not the test of security tests have been passed. He didn't need to know why they weren't passed or whether they were passed. He could have asked and demanded to know as Prime Minister. After all, as Prime Minister, he is entitled to the most secret documents of MI5 and MI6, more than anyone else in the country, apart from those security officials. The other question that I thought hit the nail on the head was the one by Stephen Flynn of the SNP, when it wasn't actually a question, it was an accusation that by appointing Peter Mandelson, knowing again what you've just said was common knowledge, that he had spent time in Epstein's Manhattan flat while Epstein himself was serving time for sex crimes, accused him of letting down and betraying the victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah,
that's unanswerable. That is.
It's a fact. He did. He absolutely let them down. He absolutely did.
We've had the defence today peppered with questions, and I thought that Kemi Badenoch was extremely good. I particularly enjoyed Lee Anderson's intervention when he called him a liar and was asked to retract and refused to, and insisted as he strode out of the chamber.
We're going to play that in a minute.
That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Actually, while you're on that point, let's remind ourselves of Lee's interlude. Here comes Lee Anderson, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem the Prime Minister's got is no one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the member's withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave.
I'm told, Trevor, that means that he not only has to leave the House of Commons, the chamber, he has to get off the Westminster estate. So you can imagine that soon after that interlude that Ian Anderson could probably be found at the Westminster Arms just up the road having a pint. He has to get off the estate. Now, I would suggest, you know, I'm not against tradition or anything like that. You know, knock yourself out. If you want to dress up in silly outfits for, you know, the opening of State Parliament and all that, great. Yeah, go ahead. But, you know, I think the public are sick to death of these conventions. Why can't MPs call each other liars? I mean, most of them bloody well are anyway. These ludicrous conventions, you can't say that word, you can't. It's what everybody in the country is saying and thinking right now. The Prime Minister is lying, he is a liar, and yet these twonks in the House of Commons aren't allowed to use that word. Time to get rid of this Victorian nonsense and drag this House kicking and screaming into the 21st century, right?
Well, I couldn't disagree with the word you said about him being universally derided across the land as a liar. And of course, we've seen that this sort of courtroom type approach today. We'll hear the prosecution tomorrow from Sir Ollie Robbins himself, the man who was sacked for doing his job. And then the jury will decide what the outcome is on next month with the local elections. And I think that the country has decided that Keir Starmer, quite rightly decided that Keir Starmer is a liar and a cheat and is basically a dishonest man, an unscrupulous man, and I think actually a shabby politician. And I think that verdict is going to come loud and clear on May the 7th.
I suspect it will. You know, in your long experience of Westminster, ever seen anything like what we've just witnessed for the last couple of hours?
Well, frankly, for the last 18 months, 20 months, I've never witnessed anything like that, simply because there's never been anything like this before. This is unbelievably unique in the sense that we have a party which was elected on a landslide and it cannot govern.
And the last question to you, Trevor, I've been saying that we don't know what Sir Ollie Robbins is going to say tomorrow when he's hauled before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee at 9 a.m. We do know that Kemi Badenoch has requested an emergency debate in the Commons straight afterwards, and it looks as if that will be allowed. So the House, if you like, is preparing for an explosive, incendiary day. And we are hearing through the grapevine that Sir Ollie is not going to go quietly. There is every chance he may well go nuclear. We don't know what he knows and what he doesn't know. But it is within his gift, potentially, to bring this Prime Minister down tomorrow morning, isn't it?
Well, I think that we can be absolutely confident that Sir Ollie Robbins knows a lot. I mean, this is a man who's risen to the very peak of the civil service in the sense that he was, until last week, the head of the Foreign Office, the permanent secretary. He knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows exactly the sequence of events. And he's a very bright and articulate man, and he'll find a way of conveying the points that you're raising here about what exactly Starmer knew, the probity of his decisions, the answers that should have been available. And I don't think it's going to make easy listening for this Prime Minister.
It's going to be a fascinating day. Popcorn time, Trevor. Perhaps we'll talk tomorrow. I hope we do. Thank you so much. Trevor Kavanagh, the brilliant former political editor of The Sun, still a brilliant columnist for that newspaper. Been around Westminster for more than half a century, so he knows what he's talking about. He's never seen anything like this. This is a Prime Minister, as Trevor said, basically on the stand. He is basically in the dock, in court, if you like, being grilled by MPs to fight for his future as the leader of this country. And frankly, I don't think he's passed the test. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. We're going to try and well, let's go to break now, and we'll take a couple of calls after these messages. So see you in a minute.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Quick message from Brian, a WhatsApp note. Good afternoon, Kev. Starmer will never resign because he has no morals. He was the one who screamed for Boris to go for eating cake. When he does go, there will be claw marks across the front door of number 10 Downing Street, where Starmer has been dragged out kicking and screaming. You're right, he really will be that. Let's listen to a couple of voice notes before we go to the phones. This first one is on Lee Anderson's intervention in the House of Commons, and it's from Chloe.
Oh, afternoon, Kevin. Yes, he was absolutely right to say Keir Starmer was lying, and he couldn't even lie in bed. I'll tell you what, if I was there, I'd say the same thing. Oh, he lies all the time. I can't stand the man. Anyway, good show.
Thanks, Chloe. I just had another thought. You know, they're not allowed to use the word lie or lie. That's just so ridiculous. These conventions that prevent them doing their damn job, you know, calling the Prime Minister what most of us think he is, a liar. Are you lying? Are you a liar? Not allowed to use that word. How ridiculous. They're also, this lot, these MPs, this House, this Westminster bubble gang, they're not allowed to discuss the royal family, who we have to give a load of our taxpayers' money to. So that's in what way are the people served by this convention? Oh, one cannot mention the royal family. Don't be ridiculous. You can't say the word liar. Don't be so stupid. What are you, 12 years old? Get rid of these conventions and discuss what the public want you to discuss. And don't tell us about the traditions of the House. Sod the traditions of the House. Discuss the issues that we want you to discuss. And if the Prime Minister is on the rack for being a liar, allow MPs to say so. Grow up, you lot. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Tony in West Sussex. Hi, Tony.
Hi, matey. What a great show. Calm down, you'll do yourself an injury.
You're right. Now, I've got a note from you, Tony, and I'm going to agree with you, and I don't think both of us will ever say this very often. Well done, Diane Abbott.
Absolutely. She was stunning. She was the fairy on the top of the cake for me. I mean, I don't like her politics, but I don't dislike the woman. But she was the star of the show. You should play that again and again and again and again, because it's another knife in his back. But very quickly, about calling someone a liar, it goes back 200 years to Parliament, where there were only men, there were no women, and it used to cause duels, and one guy would kill the other guy with a sword or a gun. So they stopped it.
So that's even more ridiculous then, that they're not allowed. So they're not allowed to say liar in case any of them have duels and shoot each other at dawn.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, it's out of date, but there's the reason. The other thing was that the King and the Queen or Queen could dissolve Parliament, so that's why they weren't allowed to discuss the King or the Queen.
Yeah, well, that's ridiculous as well. It's absolutely absurd. You know, they can take their traditions and shove them where the sun don't shine.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's 2026. But just one final point, then I won't hold you up, is that the reason why Starmer appointed Mandelson came out today with one of the MPs. Mandelson put him on the pedestal to become Prime Minister. He dumped Corbyn. He supported him. He dumped him. He didn't have support in the party. So Mandelson said, leave it to me, sunshine, pay me back later. And payback was, off you go to Washington.
Yeah, I think it was Mandelson, I think it was Blair, it was all that old Labour lot who anointed Starmer, and hence Starmer felt he had to let Mandelson get that gig because Blair wanted him in the job, so did all the old school. So, yeah.
No such thing as a free lunch, mate.
Yeah, exactly. I know that more than most, Tony. Great call, great call. Thank you very much, mate. Call again. I've got a second voice note on Lee Anderson. I think this is the other side of the argument. This is Dom on Lee Anderson's intervention in the House of Commons.
I just had to say something about my absolute frustration with Lee Anderson and reform there. You know, this is supposed to be the next government coming in, and it was unprofessional for Lee Anderson to sit there and use language like that. We all know what Keir Starmer's doing. We know he's lying, but it's down to Lee Anderson and the Reform MPs to show a degree of professionalism here and to, frankly, not waste a question. Had that question been asked properly, the Prime Minister would have been expected to answer it. And now, quite a forthright question, just because it's been asked in the wrong way, has legitimately been refused. And it's utterly disappointing that Reform have thrown that question away. And, yeah, this is supposed to be our next government. And also, Nigel Farage, is he in the building? If he's not, why not?
I didn't see Nigel Farage. I was asking that question, I must admit. In terms of Lee Anderson, why shouldn't he call the Prime Minister a liar? That's what everybody thinks. And I think you'll find that Mr Anderson knew exactly what he was doing. I think he engineered to get kicked out. And talking of getting kicked out, guess who's now being kicked out? It is your party's lunatic MP, Zara Sultana. She would not withdraw her claim in the House that Keir Starmer is, and I quote, a bare-faced liar. So Zara Sultana called the Prime Minister a bare-faced liar and became the second MP to be kicked out during this debate after Lee Anderson. So you're not allowed to use the word liar. So I don't agree with Dom. You know, I think that the madness of this House is that they're not allowed to use the word liar. You might as well just pick any other random word. You know, I don't know, you can't use the word acorn, or you can't use the word cricket, or something like that. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Stop all this nonsense and discuss the issues that concern the public properly, okay? That's my view. And as for not being able to use the word lie, that convention has to be dropped right now, along with the convention that you can't discuss the royal family. That's got to be dropped as well. These are absurd anachronisms. They've got to go. It's 2026, not 1526. Next up, it's Sun Sports. Stay where you are.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that?
You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it.
Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. So I had a fascinating weekend, basically watching football on the telly. Spurs only drawing to Brighton, not a good result for them. My team, Fulham, participating in the most boring game of football known to man against Brentford, 0-0, says it all. But of course, Sean Custis, Director of Sport of the Sun, is in the studio. The big game of the weekend was yesterday. Man City 2, Arsenal 1. What's the score now? What's the
it's
score?
a brilliant game for a start off. You've got to say it was fantastic.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Both sides at the post twice. Actually, Arsenal played pretty well. That's what's made it really interesting. We thought Arsenal, they're on a bit of a slide. Perhaps we expected them to lose to City, but not maybe in the manner they did, where we were left feeling almost sorry for them, really, that they lost. The narrative is that City have the momentum, which is true, that they will probably now go on to win the title. But of course, if City win their game in hand against Burnley on Wednesday night, both sides level on points, could be level on goal difference, and it's actually all up for grabs. Arsenal are trying to play a confident game that they can still do it. City are trying to play down their expectations. It still feels like City, but it is in the balance, to be fair.
I mean, technically, I think Arsenal would be slightly in the driving seat, but it's a question of momentum, isn't it?
They're the favourites. They're still the favourites with the bookies because City have more games to play. They've got 6 left. Arsenal got 5 left. So obviously, if you've got more games to play, you're not seen as probably having the advantage.
But that said, I don't want to disrespect Burnley, but one of those games is against Burnley.
Absolutely. And City always smash Burnley, and everybody smashes Burnley, really, as a rule. Even we smash Burnley, I think.
Even Fulham did,
Look, it feels like City have a lot of confidence. Erling Haaland's talking with a lot of confidence. He's very upbeat about their prospects, and Arsenal are giving it all hey, it's not over yet. Declan Rice particularly, and Arteta, it's not finished. We can still do it, which they've got to say, of course. But you feel there was a bit of a momentum
it's a momentum thing, isn't it? It's a direction of travel. Let me ask you something, Sean. I thought something. I watched, all of these games, but I watched the City Arsenal game. Now, this sort of orthodoxy that started by Pep Guardiola, that all teams now practice. My team, Fulham, are obsessive about it. You got to pass out from the goalkeeper. You've got to pass. Well, we saw yesterday. If you do that every single time, you're going to get yourself in trouble in the end. Both teams. Arsenal nearly
got himself in
very nearly conceded when it all went wrong with their keeper in the first half. And of course, towards the end of the first half, you had that terrible balls up in the City goal straight in from the keeper. So when are these teams going to work out that maybe it's not always the best idea to just pass out?
No, but they did mix it up a bit, City, for the goal. Donnarumma threw it out a long way for them to break. Then they scored. Yeah. And City, I think, traditionally have learned, not traditionally, but maybe more in recent years, they've learned to mix it up a little bit. Haaland particularly would like them to get the ball into the box earlier, would like to profit from some long balls. And I think City have changed a little bit. They do it a bit more than they used to. If you go back to the Spanish model from around 2010 when Spain were winning all the time, it was simply keep the ball, keep the ball, keep the ball. Frankly, I thought they bored people to death, Spain. They didn't excite me at all. And it was just keep the ball as much as you can, and eventually you'll find a little way through. I don't think we're quite as dull as that now. I feel that City do try to mix it up a bit more than they used to. Arsenal, of course, are a bit more direct. Score from like a set piece or two. And, of course, Arsenal really could have got the equaliser in the end, couldn't they? With a ball into the box, Havertz's header, which was a very, very good chance. Had he put that away, we might be talking a very, very different scenario now. He should have, and I think he knew it as well. Of course, he probably caught it too well. Had it been you or I, it might have glanced off our head.
In the wrong direction and gone in,
yeah, possibly.
Well, should we move on?
You mentioned Spurs earlier on.
Well, let's talk about Spurs, but of course their fate may well be dictated by what happens tonight. West Ham away to Crystal Palace, vital game for the Hammers. But let's talk a little bit about Spurs. I mean, they let it go again in the last minutes.
That last minute was a bit of a crusher. I've talked to people who were at the game at the weekend. The atmosphere was really good. They pressed really well.
They attack okay.
I think you have to say they played pretty well, really, and then they got done by a bit of a sucker punch at the end, but Brighton have got themselves back together. Good side. They scored an amazing volley, their first goal, and they played pretty well too. But Spurs will be feeling pretty sore about having dropped 2 points. And then, of course, Nottingham Forest went and won easily yesterday.
They did, didn't they?
3-1 against your favourite side.
4-1, wasn't it?
4-1, sorry, against your favourite side.
Yeah.
And that's put them giving them a bit of daylight. And if West Ham beat Palace tonight, and Palace have virtually clocked out as far as the league's concerned, they're just concentrating on the Conference League in Europe.
Yeah.
If West Ham win tonight, Spurs are in absolutely mega trouble.
I
mean, a world of trouble. And it is possible, because West Ham have been playing with a bit more confidence.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously, it's starting to look a bit of a worry.
It's a bit of a worry for Spurs.
Even if they got to 39 points, which some people think they can do, it might not be enough.
It's usually 40 points is supposed to be the sort of the Rubicon that once you get across that. But yeah, Spurs in a world of trouble.
Have gone down more. 42 West Ham ones.
I should state that, of course, Crystal Palace West Ham as of 7 p.m. Full coverage starts on TalkSport tonight with Sam Matterface and Danny Murphy. Kick off there at 8 p.m, so you don't want to miss that. But if West Ham win that, does that seal Spurs'
No,
fate?
no, it doesn't seal their fate. No, far from it. I mean, Spurs have got Wolves to play soon, so I mean, you would think they could win that one. But it's not. It's going to make life pretty difficult, because West Ham would then be 4 points ahead of Spurs. 4 points ahead of Spurs. Forest will be 5 points ahead of them, and they're in third bottom place. So it's not good.
It's not good. I mean, I think the problem with Spurs is when they played us, I saw them live, and I thought they looked quite lively coming forward. They got some good players, injuries, problems notwithstanding.
Yeah.
But their defence, it's like every time the opposition attacks, you kind of almost expect them to concede.
Well, also, Danso got his pocket picked, didn't he, for Brighton's equaliser when he was in his own box. And that's just not what you need, is it? They do have some injury problems too. Madison's coming back, might help them in the run-in. So there maybe is a little bit of hope for them. Just one other thing I should mention, Bournemouth now have a new manager.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, Marco Rose was confirmed as the new manager to replace Adoni Iraola, who's had a brilliant week. He managed to beat Chelsea and he beat Newcastle as well at the weekend. So Marco Rose is taking over a club in rude health. He's
German. I've got some bad news for him. On May the 9th, they're coming to Craven Cottage, so they're going to lose that one. That's Fulham. But Bournemouth, May the 9th.
We're all looking forward to that one, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, I have an alternative agenda to the rest of it. No, fantastic sports review from Sean Costas there. Crystal Palace, West Ham, live on TalkSport tonight at 7 p.m. Kick-off at 8 p.m. You don't want to miss that. Relegation issues to be decided. When we come back, we'll talk to Simon Danjak. We're going to discuss what's been going on in the House of Commons and the future of our Prime Minister. That next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, things may come and things may go, but the Harry and Meghan clown show goes on forever. So even on this very, very hectic, busy day in Westminster, the Prime Minister fighting for his very future in an extraordinary session in the House of Commons, answering questions for more than 2 hours from angry MPs, frankly, who want to know what the hell went on in the appointing of Peter Mandelson to the key position of Ambassador to the United States of America. Despite that, we're going to have to catch up with what happened with Harry and Meghan when they went down under. Kinsey Schofield joins us in 20 or 25 minutes to reveal the extraordinary details, and extraordinary they are. So that in just a little while. But before we get to Kinsey, let's just recap on what's been going on in the House of Commons. As I say, the Prime Minister fighting for his very future. Let's get to join the show former Labour MP, now Reform UK, Simon Danjic. Welcome, Simon.
Good to be with you, Kevin.
Well, before we get your take on what we've just witnessed in the House of Commons, quite extraordinary, quite unprecedented. It was as if the Prime Minister was on trial and the MPs were putting him in position, grilling him as to whether or not he had any right to continue to be this country's leader. An extraordinary spectacle. Before I get your take on that, Simon, let's have a look at Keir Starmer. This is the essence of what he said in his initial statement at 3:30 this afternoon.
Mr. Speaker, last Tuesday evening, the 14th of April, I found out for the first time that on the 29th of January 2025, before Peter Mandelson took up his position as ambassador, the Foreign Office officials granted him developed vetting clearance against the specific recommendation of the United Kingdom Security Vetting that developed vetting clearance should be denied. I immediately instructed officials in Downing Street and the Cabinet Office to urgently establish the facts on my authority. I wanted to know who made the decision, on what basis, who knew, and Mr. Speaker, I wanted that information for the precise and explicit purpose of updating this House. Because this is information I should have had a long time ago.
And indeed, Simon would have had a long time ago had he have read the front page of the Independent newspaper last September the 12th. April the 14th was the first time I'd heard anything of it. What is he talking about? It was all over the front page of the Independent newspaper, metaphorically because it's an online paper, last September in an exclusive written by David Mallox, that paper's political editor. It also appeared in the Financial Times. That specifically stating that Peter Mandelson had failed the security services vetting process. So Starmer and his gang saying, we only found out last Tuesday. That's just a crock of crap, isn't it?
It's utter nonsense, and he's not surviving this. Nobody's accepting his arguments here. He's not fully answering the questions. I watched his contribution, and Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party's questioning of him. She posed 6 questions, I think, to him, gave him the questions in advance, and he still failed to answer them adequately. He's struggling to survive. There is no doubt about this. And, you know, there's a number of points to raise here. If he was so concerned about the vetting, if it was so crucial that he found out what the results of the vetting was, why didn't he wait for the results before appointing Mandelson? He appointed Mandelson before the vetting had concluded. He could have postponed it. He could have waited until he got the results of the vetting. But he chose not to. He was determined to appoint Mandelson at all costs. That's the reality of it. And nobody's buying any other argument around it.
I agree. So the two elephants in the room are, hey, Keir, Hey, number 10 Downing Street, do you read the papers? Do you read the front pages of the national newspapers? You know, when political editors get stories like Peter Mandelson failed the vetting process, do you read the papers? Because you can't say that we knew nothing about this. It was in the public domain. And the other question that needs to be asked, the other massive elephant in the room, is when he makes great play just now, the fury he feels. I cannot believe, it's staggering, furious that no one told me. You know, that the Foreign Office kept me in the dark. I wasn't told that he'd failed the vetting process. Well, Starmer knew all about Peter Mandelson's background. Twice fired from the Labour cabinet by two Prime Ministers, Blair and Brown, for egregious mistakes, for lying, for scandals. So he knew about that. He knew about his business connections. He knew about Russia. He knew about China. He knew most preeminently that Mandelson had kept up a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted of child sex offences, to the extent he stayed in Epstein's Manhattan apartment while Epstein was still in jail for paedophile offences. So Starmer knew all about that. And so the elephant in the room is, OK, you say that the Foreign Office chose not to tell you he'd failed the vetting process. All right, OK, we'll reluctantly agree to go along with that, even though we find it hard to believe. But here's the elephant in the room. You didn't ask. You didn't ask whether or not he'd passed the vetting process? You didn't even inquire? What on earth is he talking about? If he didn't ask how the security vetting process went before appointing this man to the position of our ambassador to the United States of America, if he didn't ask, I think he has to go on that basis alone. That is an egregious abrogation of his duty as a Prime Minister.
You're exactly right there, Kevin, and that's the very question that Diane Abbott, Labour MP, asked Starmer during this debate. She said, why didn't you ask the questions? Yeah. He's the former Director of Public Prosecutions. He's supposed to be a prosecutor, for goodness sake, and he chose not to ask any questions about... He chose not to speak to Mandelson. At one stage, you were telling us that Mandelson had lied to him. He never spoke to Mandelson. That's a lie in its own right. He never spoke to Mandelson. He never asked any questions. That's a complete failure of doing the job that he's been elected to do. You're exactly right. And you mentioned Russia there. One of the questions that Kemi Badenoch asked very specifically was when the Prime Minister knew that Mandelson had carried on as a non-executive director of this Russian company, Systema, which is very close to Putin, and he carried on as a non-exec director of that business, that Russian business, after Putin had invaded Crimea. And now Starmer refuses to answer that question because we've since found out in documents that he was told about Mandelson and that arrangement in something like September 2024. So he knew about that before he even appointed Mandelson to the top diplomatic job. I mean, this is not going away. It's not going to survive the week. We talked about this last week, didn't we, at the end of last week? And he's got tomorrow Ollie Robbins at the Select Committee, where he'll give his version of events as Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office. That's who Starmer is blaming. And then on Wednesday, we've got Prime Minister's questions.
Well, listen, yes, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m, I think it is, Sir Ollie Robbins, the sacked Foreign Office Mandarin, appears before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee with his side of the story. We are hearing, Simon, through the grapevine that Sir Ollie, as you might imagine, is not in a good mood. He is prepared to go nuclear. Who knows what his story is? But his story could be potentially the end for Starmer. If he turns around and says, listen, I personally told the Prime Minister, he's under oath, then Starmer will be finished. It's going to be bombshell stuff tomorrow morning. But let's just remind ourselves of what Diane Abbott asked in her unusually trenchant question today in the House of Commons.
Peter Mandelson has a history, and what this House wants to know is why, knowing Peter Mandelson's history, going back now 30 years, and given what has been known, it's one thing to say, as he insists on saying, nobody told me. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me. The question is, why didn't the Prime Minister ask?
Exactly right. And she also asked the question, which is another thing I want to ask you. So there's Diane making my point. You know, it's all very well to say you weren't told, but why didn't you ask? That is really, really crucial. Are you really telling us you didn't ask? Because you do seem to be Prime Minister. And if that is the case, you have to go on that basis alone. But the other big question, Simon, I want to get your view on it, is underpinning all of this is some kind of mania to get Peter Mandelson into this job, our ambassador to the United States of America, to make him our man in Washington. Now, I understand, shall we say, the enthusiasm to get that guy into this role. You know, Tony Blair, all these old schoolers, Mandelson himself, for the old Blair project, the old witch project, they wanted their man in Washington. They wanted to get Mandelson into that job. And also, Mandelson's an oily creep. He's good at conversation. He's good at small talk. He's good at wrapping people around his little finger. He might have operated well in the interesting circumstance of a Trump presidency. So I get that. OK, he could be good at this. This might be just the job that Mandelson might be good at. I get that. But once all this other stuff starts cropping up, his connections to China, his connections to Russia, the fact that he carried on being best friends, best pals with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted of sex crimes, child sex offences, all of these factors. Why, with all of that on board, were Starmer and the gang still desperate to get this guy into Washington, into our ambassadorship? Why? Why the main? It's not. It goes beyond an enthusiasm. It goes into the grounds of almost irrational mania. Why were they so obsessed with getting Mandelson into this job?
We can only try and understand Starmer and those around him, can't we? McSweeney and Doyle, the Director of Communications, Matthew Doyle at the time, they were mentored by Mandelson. There's no doubt about it. And they were keen to get him into this job, and Starmer as well. And I suppose if we're being polite about this, Starmer needed some political nous, and he was getting that from Mandelson. And Mandelson had been playing a role in Downing Street well before he was appointed to this job. And that's clearly documented. And so I think Starmer saw himself as reliant on Mandelson's support and assistance in terms of doing some of the politics, which Starmer clearly lacks.
Yes, indeed. Now, another interlude in this long day of reckoning, moment of reckoning for the Prime Minister in the House of Commons was when Reform UK finally got their opportunity to ask a question, and it was the redoubtable Lee Anderson who promptly got kicked out. Let's take a look at Lee's contribution to this debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem the Prime Minister's got is no one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the members withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave.
Sorry, it is funny. However, so what I want to ask you, Simon, is, you know, you've been in that madhouse, the House of Commons. You know, the people of this country, the citizens of this country, me included, you as well, I'm sure, it's like, hang on a second. You lot are all sitting in this antiquated chamber. We, around the country, are all suspecting that our Prime Minister, as Zara Sultana went on to say, is a barefaced liar. as Lee Anderson said, you're a liar. Are you a liar? That's what we're all thinking. We're all thinking this guy's a liar. And MPs should be debating that. And what happens? Oh, no, you can't use that word. What is this, a playground for 12-year-olds? This has got to stop. These kind of conventions we should kick out. And we should bring this House, drag it, kicking and screaming into the 21st century. The question on the table is Keir Starmer a liar? Most people, 84% last week in a poll, believe that he is. It is absolutely absurd that these MPs, representatives of the people, are not allowed to use the word lie, liar or lying. That convention has got to end.
I would agree with you there. There are some conventions that quite clearly need to be modernised. There's no doubt about that. And it does make it antiquated and people struggle to relate to it. And it shouldn't be like that, should it? It's our parliament. It should be readily understandable to the public. So I think there is a need for change. But another point here, he has misled Parliament and he should have corrected the record the following Wednesday. He said he's needed nearly a week to come up with all the answers to find out what the issues were, and then he's finally had a chance to present it to Parliament on Monday. Well, the trouble with that argument is that he didn't answer all the questions, and one of the elephants in the room is advice that he received before appointing Mandelson from Simon Case, who's the most senior civil servant at the time. And Simon Case said to him, if you're making a political appointment, then you have to wait for the vetting to have completed. And he was asked about this in the chamber today, and he refused to give an answer. He ignored Simon Case's advice before making the appointment, and that's significant. I have to say, that opinion poll that you quote, you know, there are only 16% believe Starmer telling the truth on this issue. I suspect it's considerably less after today. I don't think he's going to survive this. He's in one heck of a mess.
Yeah, do you think that? I mean, you and I talked on Friday, and I said by this time next week we're going to be in a very interesting situation. We knew that Starmer had this grilling ahead of him, this day of reckoning in the House of Commons. I don't think he did particularly well there at all. All we learned from the last 2.5 hours is the amount of sentiment against him among MPs, and we're talking about his own MPs as well as all the others. The whole of the House, be they Labour, be they Tory, SNP, Lib Dem, Reform, all the MPs of all those parties, including the governing party, have now got great suspicions about this man. They all feel maybe, just maybe, he's not the right man to be our Prime Minister. He is in huge trouble. And the last word from you, Simon, on what you think might happen when Ollie Robbins, Sir Ollie Robbins, goes before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee tomorrow, because he has it within his gift to destroy the Prime Minister if he wants, I think. It's going to be bombshell stuff, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think Ollie Robbins is going to tell us exactly who he has told about this issue. And I suspect he's told people in 10 Downing Street. And then that puts Starmer in a real difficult position. The smart thing Labour MPs could have done today is to announce that he's going to go and set out a timetable for Starmer to be replaced. That might have actually given him a bit of a lift in the locals, Scottish and Welsh elections that are upcoming. But if they don't announce that he's going to go, then they're going to get trounced. They are going to be heavily punished for having Starmer remain as Prime Minister.
Well, of course, we have to reserve judgment on that until those elections ever happen. But I just think, again, you know, there is always, you come back to this massive point that no MP asked him about, and it seems to be kicked out of the narrative. It should not be. This was the splash. This was the big story on the metaphorical front page of the online newspaper, The Independent, last September the 12th. Peter Mandelson failed the vetting process. So how can they be saying we only found out last Tuesday? Just doesn't stack up. That cannot be true, can it?
No, absolutely not. And it still remains that Starmer appointed Mandelson to this top diplomatic job, knowing everything we knew about Mandelson well in advance. So irrespective of the vetting, irrespective of what senior civil servants have said or not said, or who they've said it to, Starmer has to take responsibility for making one of the worst political appointments in recent British political history.
Absolutely. Fascinating day lies ahead tomorrow, Simon. I hope you'll come on and we'll discuss what we find out, in the coming hours. It's going to be fascinating stuff. Thank you so much, Simon. Always good to talk to you. Simon Danjit, former Labour MP, now Reform UK. Do you think, I mean, we're going to take some calls in just a little while. Got a big full switchboard. Is he a liar? Is Lee Anderson right? Do you think he's a liar? 84% of the country think Keir Starmer's a liar. I've got to say I include myself in that amount of people. I think he's a liar. Do you think he's a liar? I think he lies as soon as he breathes. This man is desperate. He's a desperate little man, desperately fighting to save his own backside, and he'll say anything to keep that job. But I don't think it's going to work for too much longer. Do you think the Prime Minister is a liar? 0344 499 1000. Let's go to break now. When we come back, Kinsey Schofield on Harry and Meghan and their trip down under. Fascinating stuff as well. All of that still to come. Stay tuned.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, let's take a quick break from Keir Starmer and his travails, shall we? And let's talk about Meghan Markle and Harry, Prince Harry. They've just been to Australia in that bizarre tour. People still trying to work out what the hell it was all about, but mainly I think it was all about making money. And a big poll has revealed that the British public cannot stand, they hate the Sussexes cashing in on their royal connections, on their royal status. Not surprising. Let's talk to Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, of course. Welcome to the show, Kins.
I mean, I think that Harry and Meghan, there is a relationship between Keir Starmer and Harry and Meghan, because I suspect that Harry got his Ravik security reconsidered because you were dealing with a new administration is the wrong word over there. But, you know, under Liz Truss, under Boris, and under Rishi Sunak, Ravik continuously told Harry, absolutely not. You can tell us your itinerary. We'll give you 30, you give us 30-day notice and we'll let you know what type of security we're going to provide. But under Keir, there's been some reconsideration, and perhaps Harry and Meghan are nervous about a loss of Keir Starmer. Perhaps they're hoping that he stays exactly where he is, because it sounds like they might be getting their way a little bit underneath him.
Yes, certainly. The Democrats in America and the Labour Party here in Britain tend to look more favourably on Harry and Meghan than most of the rest of us, because they are, of course, liberals with a small L. They hate Donald Trump and so on and so forth. So yeah, interesting that there is a sort of slightly more generous viewing of this couple since Starmer came into power. But let's talk about what happened in Australia. They've just been on this weird 3 or 4 day tour. Now, it sort of started off with these faux appearances at women's refuge centres, children's hospitals and all that, the usual PR pictures, aren't we wonderful? But it boiled down to, in the end, Meghan hosting or being the main attraction at this weird women's weekend at a retreat hotel in Sydney. Now, people paid 1,700 British pounds, best part of 3,000 American dollars, to attend this event. 3 days, women only, to bask in the glory of Meghan's presence. She was going to sit down, have dinner with them. She was going to pose for selfies if you paid an extra fee and all that kind of stuff. Turns out that she turned up at this place, these people having spent all this money, 300 women, and spent 2 hours there and then left. That's outrageous, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's outrageously something we should have predicted, that there would be all this hype built around this one event, and Meghan would... I mean, I think that both of those people are very low effort. I've said that forever as we've watched Meghan Markle pursue a career in influencing. Meghan doesn't want to do the hard stuff. She doesn't want to go all over the world and represent the British royal family. She wants to get thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for a post on Instagram. Ultimately, that's her objective. I love that Family Guy scene where they're sitting around the pool and she jokes that it's time to post for Del Taco, because I truly feel like that embodies the type of person that we're dealing with, because she doesn't like hard work. Neither does Prince Harry. And at the same time, though, you have to sit back and think to yourself, did they get what they deserved if they were willing to pay that type of money to be in the presence of Meghan Markle? Like, I have no sympathy whatsoever to the people that spent that type of money and stroked this woman's ego.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, why would you ever want to go to that stupid non-event anyway? But these two, they called it the misery tour. I mean, all they've done, for these past 4 days in Australia, was just moan, whine on about, her going, I'm the most trolled, bullied person in the world.
Yeah, like Meghan Markle, your dad just lost a leg. Yeah, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was literally, analytically, statistically, the most trolled person in 2024 while she was dealing with cancer. Just shut up. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then you got him saying, oh, you know, I've got to upgrade. I want to be a better parent than my dad, and I had to go for therapy when I was going to be a father because I couldn't cope with it, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's transformational and all this. It's like, he was like having a therapy session, you know, behind the lectern, delivering a speech for $50,000, moaning. I never wanted to be a royal. I had to cleanse myself of my harrowing past. What harrowing past? Being brought up in palaces. Oh, you poor thing.
I'd actually argue and say it's probably the Nazi costume.
Yeah, well,
hopefully it's the
that.
Nazi costume he's trying to purge himself of.
Yeah, but when they, you know, she's got, she went to this Meghan Markle Megstock Festival in Sydney and said, I've had a very hard life in the public eye. Look, nobody is condoning all the trolling she gets, or the trolling that Harry gets. Living in the public eye can be difficult, but my God, first world problems. You two, Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, you don't have problems. People suffer, you know, having problems with the cost of living have problems. People out of work have problems. Homeless people have problems. You get trolled on Twitter a lot. Oh, you know, you had to get transformational therapy because you're going to be a dad. Do give me a break. Do me a favour. Stop moaning, you two.
Your dad's literally having to learn with, literally right now having to learn to live without a limb.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if somebody says something mean to you online, but like in classic actions don't meet their words form, Meghan has claimed for years that she doesn't read what's on the internet about her.
Yeah.
So, you know, this just proves again that these two have a very interesting relationship with the truth.
Exactly right. And I mean, there's been this huge poll here in Britain. I suppose it's not that surprising, but it does sort of hammer the nail on the head. A massive poll over the weekend for the Mail on Sunday newspaper has revealed that the British public absolutely hate the gruesome twosome, the Duchess and Duke of Sussex, cashing in on their, I would say, fading royal status. They hate the fact that these two are earning money because they are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which is precisely what the late, great Queen Elizabeth did not want them to do. And the British public absolutely detest them cashing in, monetising their situation, their connection to the royal family.
I don't think we're making enough of the fact that Meghan Markle, there was a strategy meeting that the people sat around a table or they sat around a Zoom call, and they all agreed that Australia was the place to announce that Meghan Markle was an investor in an influencer app where you could shop her closet. And Meghan posed next to children in an outfit that were dying of cancer, anorexic teenagers. Meghan clutched members of the Bondi Beach victims. And within minutes, those outfits were available on this app. She's using these victims and children and ill children to sell her clothing for a commission. I mean, I look at that and I think that Queen Elizabeth is doing cartwheels in her tomb. Like, there is no way in hell she would have approved of something like that. She would have been disgusted by it. Yeah. You can't guarantee some of those children that they're pictured with will be here in a few years. Yeah. And there's Meghan using their presence to sell her wardrobe. It's the most vile thing I've ever seen in my life. I would have told you I don't think she could stoop so low, but here we are. And on top of that, these are two people that go all over the world pretending to be experts on protecting children online, yet other people's children their faces are being posted all over social media next to Harry and Meghan in a hospital. I mean, I feel like this is more of the hypocrisy tour, because they've shown us who they truly are, how greedy and soulless they are, and just how utterly shameless they're capable of being. They're desperate for a dollar, and if I were any organization, including that hospital, I would hopefully have learned my lesson by this. And I'd say, these two are toxic and I don't want the association. I'm not going to allow them to use me and use my patients and use my customers or whatever the circumstances are to elevate themselves.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, Meghan, by the way, if she ever wants to come on the show and explain herself, by all means do. All her people can send us statements. But what people were saying about this tour originally, in their innocence, they were saying, oh, it's amazing. Look how many times she's changing her costumes from almost from moment to moment. I mean, literally every scene she's in a different outfit. You think, oh, look, she keeps changing. She keeps changing. And guess why? Guess why? We subsequently found out everything she wore, including these scenes. If you're watching on the telly, you can see her in this rather strange sort of semi-military sleeveless dress, which didn't seem all that appropriate to go and visit sick kids in a children's hospital wearing, but that's what she wore. So we found out why. Within seconds of all these appearances on the one-off AI fashion website, these outfits are available for sale, and she, the Duchess of Sussex, the difficult Duchess, is getting a sizable slice of the action. Furthermore, she is an investor in the AI one-off website. So she was making money by changing clothes and wearing outfits to visit sick children and homeless women in a refuge, and that is grubby, that is tacky, that is tawdry.
It's a way lower than I ever thought we would go with her. Like, the fact that I'm having to say this out loud, I'm surprised that I'm surprised. It's really just very disturbing that this is the way that their mind works. But, you know, you flash back to Valentine Lowe's courtiers, where she says, I can't believe I'm getting paid for this. So again, back to that visual of the strategy session, whether on Zoom or in a physical meeting room, where she's clearly asking her team and she's clearly brainstorming, okay, how are we going to make money off of this? How are we going to look like fake royals so we generate the media attention that we need? And how are we going to monetize this lifestyle? And that's disgusting, because she's stomping on the ill children, the victims of the Bondi Beach shooting. You know, like you said, the women in the Women's Refuge Center, some of them homeless, as she's dripping in gold. She's using these poor people not only to make a buck, but again, to elevate herself, because at the end of the day, she's trying to look like Mother Teresa in all of these images and videos coming out of there as well. So
she got $250,000 for that 4-hour appearance at the Meg Festival. He got
2 hours. She was there for 2 hours.
2 hours, even worse.
Some have argued, like Rupert Bell argued with me, that he's heard it was only 30 minutes.
$250,000 for that. It's American dollars. He got $50,000 to spew out his guts with all that Californian psycho babble about transformational claptrap. $50,000 for that, plus the clothes. We will have to add up exactly how much these two made from this tour of Australia. And we also have to brace ourselves, because the word is the next time they're coming on one of these cash-in tours, royal pretend tours, will be of Britain. I wish them all the best with that, because that is going to be quite a spectacle. Kinsey, fantastic to talk to you. We'll talk again on Thursday. Thank you very much for your excellent time. It's Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered there. What do you think about Meghan making all that money, and Harry? They now go on pretend royal tours to make money, to loot foreign countries for the cash they can milk out of them. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Let's go to break. Your calls, your messages when we come back. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Got a message from James echoing what a lot of us are thinking. James saying, I find myself agreeing with Diane Abbott. What next? Cats chasing dogs? The world is upside down, but we're all thinking that. It's not often you'll hear me say this, but well done, Diane Abbott. What she said essentially was, what was the big mania for getting Mandelson into this position, Ambassador of the United States of America? If you weren't told, Keir Starmer, that he'd failed the vetting process, why the hell didn't you ask? He should have asked that question. Demanding an answer from Starmer and not really getting one. So for once, also the main thing that Diane Abbott said that I think really spoke to all of us, as Starmer said, that the process was followed, due process was not followed in process. She said the public don't give a damn about bureaucratic process. They want to know about the right thing to do. And you didn't do the right thing, did you, Starmer? Simple as that. Here's a couple of voice notes on... first of all, this is Rich on Lee Anderson.
Regarding Nigel Farage not being there today, I think it was planned that Lee Anderson would get up and say what he did, because no other words needed to be spoken. He spoke for the nation and the mood of the nation. So I think it was pre-planned and a brilliant strategy. Get it over with. Brilliant.
Yeah, but I mean, Nigel Starmer could have been there. Nigel Farage could have been there, and Lee Anderson still could have made that speech. So, don't see a particular strategy there. Nigel Farage just wasn't there. We don't know why, but that would not. If Nigel Farage was there, that would not have stopped or precluded Lee Anderson from saying what he did, that the Prime Minister's a liar. So I don't think it was a strategy, Rich, but point taken. Here's Sandra on Keir Starmer.
If we just put aside who knew what or whatever about the vetting process, Starmer must have known about Mandelson's reputation and history. So why did it have to be him? Why did he want him as US ambassador? Several MPs asked him that today, and I don't think he actually answered it. So I think that's something that needs to be looked into. What is the reason?
Yeah, Sandra, I think, as usual in these circumstances, it's not so much what Starmer said today, it's what he didn't say. I wasn't told. Why didn't you ask? Why didn't you ask whether or not this very dodgy man had failed or passed the security vetting process? Prime Minister, why didn't you ask? What's wrong with you? If you didn't ask, you're in the wrong job, aren't you? Let's be honest. Right, let's go to the phones. We'll take a quick call, then we'll have to go to break, then we'll take calls to the end of the show. But let's first talk to Ian in London. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Kevin. Kevin, a couple of things very, very quickly. I've just looked up online. A prevaricator of the truth is called Keir Starmer, who avoids telling the truth directly, often by deliberately vague, misleading or evasive, acting as a softer synonym for a liar or equivalent. Does that sound about right?
Well, yeah. I mean, as I say, today Starmer would have been very careful not to lie. But what he said, it was more by we learn more from what he didn't say than what he did say today. In the past, we're going to find out in the next few days, but has he been that careful about telling the truth in the House? Has he been that careful about telling the truth generally, or has he been lying to save his own backside? I think the vast majority of the country think he's a liar.
Can I just say one other thing? Very, very quickly? Well, there's two things. One is he didn't accept... There is no way that anybody in MI5 or MI6 who did this sort of thing did not say to somebody else in number 10, we never let Mandelson to go through. We said it shouldn't happen. There is no way that did not come out inside number 10.
Well, well, he says that he wasn't told. He said the Foreign Office kept that news from him. Ollie Robbins at this stage is saying, well, he wasn't required to tell the Prime Minister, which sounds a bit absurd. I mean, there is an outside chance that somewhere or other Starmer didn't know this, but I find that very hard to believe. We may well find out, Ian, tomorrow morning when Ollie Robbins testifies at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee at 9 a.m.
One last thing, can I just say this?
Very
Kevin?
quickly, yeah, go on.
Very quickly. How dare Sultana say that he's a liar for what she says in the House and outside?
Yeah, well...
That, you know, with the other one...
Why shouldn't she say he's a liar? He is, isn't he?
Yeah, but she's a bigger liar than him.
Oh, well, lots of liars call other people liars, but I think this convention that MPs aren't allowed to use the word lie or liar is just ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous, and it should stop. But Ian, I've got to move on. Good call. Thank you very much, Ian, in London there. Let's go to break. More calls when we come back. Stay exactly where you are.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A quick Iran war update. We haven't even mentioned that today. Basically, the situation is Iran has blocked the Strait of Hormuz, and Donald Trump says if they don't reopen it, he's going to bomb Iran back into the Stone Age. Do you feel like the record might be stuck I do. So anyway, Alex Phillips may or may not cover that issue when she's in for Peter Cardwell tonight from 7 until 10 p.m. So Alex Phillips in a little while. I think she'll be in the studio to tell you what she's got lined up for your entertainment. But in the meantime, a little quick message. Brad says, I'm so massively disappointed in Lee Anderson and Robert Jenrick. They were given 2 opportunities to keep Starmer squirming on the hook, and they wasted them with absolutely pointless showboating. Even the Labour backbenchers were asking more relevant and damaging questions than these 2. This wasn't the forum, guy. You misread the situation. I wanted more from Reform. I don't agree with you really, Brad, but you're perfectly entitled to your view. I think Lee Anderson stood up and said what the nation are thinking. Hey, mate, you're just a liar, aren't you? That's what the nation thinks. You know, when you strip away all the ludicrous formalities of that antediluvian, antiquated House of Commons, you can't use the word liar. Why not? Strip that away. 84% of the public think he's a liar. Lee Anderson decided to say so and got kicked out of the chamber for that reason. So did Zara Sultana from your party. So use the word lie, you get thrown out. Ridiculous. What do people think? They think he's a liar. So why not get the House of Commons to be allowed to talk like normal people? Might help, mightn't it? Let's talk to Danny in London. Hello, Danny.
Thank you. A couple of points. Esther McVeigh, I think she's been on your programme a few times. Yep. She said to Starmer, as well as I think a couple of other people asked him, blah, 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 you knew what he was, so why did you appoint him? And his reply to everyone was, yes, I made a mistake. He never, ever said why he appointed him.
Yeah, and also there's another thing, Danny. When he was asked, why did you sack Ollie Robbins? He said, because Ollie Robbins gave me an explanation for not telling me that Mandelson had failed the vetting process that I was not happy with. I didn't find that satisfactory, so I fired him. Next question. So what was the reason that Ollie Robbins gave you, Prime Minister? Oh, I'm not answering that.
He didn't want to know, did he, Starmer? He didn't want to know.
No, of course not. He was keeping secrets again. He was keeping secrets. Do you think he'll survive the week, Danny?
Yeah, I do, because there's no one else to replace him. But can I say one have a quick point? When you mislead Parliament, apparently the next available opportunity, you've got to go to Parliament and explain a position. Yeah. Now, he knew on Tuesday about this, which he admitted he knew. Yeah. And why he said he didn't tell Parliament on Wednesday, he had to get some blah, blah, blah. All he had to say was Parliament, something else has come across, but I won't give you any more things until I get more information. But he didn't even mention it, did he? He did not mention it.
Yeah, well, no, exactly right. And it's going to be a very awkward day for him tomorrow as well, Danny. Danny, good call. Danny in London there. Quick message here from Chris. After watching Starmer lie his way through the entire afternoon, he looked like a dead man walking. I loved Lee Anderson and also a young lady on the Tories benches calling him a liar and would not rescind it. Great on them. That wasn't, that was... Zara Sultana, who's very much not on the Tory benches, far from it. She's on the extreme left-wing benches, and she got kicked out for calling him a liar as well. Let's quickly talk to Laura in Wiltshire. Hello, Laura.
Hey, Kath. I just thought that, interestingly, this afternoon, John McDonnell made asked one of the most key questions.
Yeah, go on.
Why?
That's it, isn't it?
Really, it was a cutting question, the New Labour movement, or whatever it is they call it, with him and all of those guys. I thought it was excellent. And Isabel Oakeshott nailed it the other day, this afternoon, saying, why do they ask so many questions? Instead of asking just like, why this, they ask, why this, and then blah, 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 blah. And so then Starmer just gets to answer the easiest question.
Yeah. And you know what my question would be? You know what my question would be, Laura, if I was a backbencher? Perish the thought. Some poor constituency lumbered with me. Can you imagine that? But anyway, I would stand up and say, do you read the papers, Prime Minister? Because last September the 12th, Mandelson failing the vetting process was the front page story in the Independent newspaper. So don't tell us you don't know about it. It was the front page of a national newspaper in the public domain last September the 12th, right?
Totally, but John McDonnell was on the nail, and I thought, my God, that is really below the deck for Starmer. And then my question that I keep asking, and I've called in to talk various times to say, if Ollie Robbins did the right thing, which Starmer says, well, he wasn't allowed to tell me, so he didn't tell me, and he couldn't tell me, is now being fired. Why is he being fired? And why are we paying all this money to pay him off for doing something that he was,
exactly. It was probably was due process. But the question that needs to be asked there, as Starmer goes, oh, nobody told me, they didn't tell me, that makes me furious. Why didn't they tell me? They didn't tell anyone in the cabinet. Hey, Prime Minister, didn't you ask? Didn't you ask? That is the question, because it seems like he didn't. And if he didn't, that is almost worse than him lying. That is utter incompetence and an abrogation of his duty. Laura, excellent call. I've got to go, though. Thank you very much. Laura in Wiltshire there. Good call. Well, God, it's Kevin Alex again. Alex Phillips is in the crosstalk. What do you make of it all?
Do you know what? When he was being cross-examined in Parliament, one thing I noticed is MPs love the sound of their own voice. Yeah. So they have to stand up and sound very pompous and very intelligent. And so they ask him about 3 questions. Yeah. And so then he picks the ones from the 3 they've asked that he wants to answer. And most MPs put forward the same question first and then rubbled it by asking other things. Yeah. But the first question is, why? Why? I don't care about process. I don't care about procedure or protocol. It doesn't matter. You're not in a court of law. You're the Prime Minister. You're not trying to defend the indefensible. Well, I suppose you are, as a barrister. But why did you do it? He was called the Dark Prince for a reason. We knew he was a mucky man. Yeah. Everyone knows that.